I wake up early, I sleep alone. I try to find love from a stranger on my phone. My vision blurred, so I forget. Dying to hold you, but you left me here for dead. How could I do what I've done if I'm in love? You know I did what I did, you loaded the gun. And I don't wanna think about you anyway. I do it anyway. Yeah, I didn't mean to do it every day. I do it anyway. Messing with monsters up in my head. Lied to myself lying beside her in my bed. Paint over pictures you left behind. I'd punch the walls if it would make you change your mind. How could I do what I've done if I'm in love? You know I did what I did, you loaded the gun. And I don't wanna think about you anyway. I do it anyway. Yeah, I didn't mean to do it every day. I do it anyway. I do it anyway. I do it anyway. Don't wanna think about you anyway. I do it anyway. How could I do what I've done if I'm in love? You know I did what I did, you loaded the gun. And I don't wanna think about you anyway. I do it anyway. Yeah, I didn't mean to do it every day. I do it anyway. I do it anyway. I do it anyway. Don't wanna think about you anyway. I do it anyway. I do it anyway.
Another breakout, yeah. I'm not a breakout artist, I'm a straight up takedown artist. You're a shut up, sit down artist. At the back door, man, a shakedown artist. After this, you need a makeup artist. I'm listening, trying to figure where your heart is. I pick apart, trying to figure where the art is. Couple minutes, you'll be swimming in the darkness. Couple lyrics from the gang, that'll bang, bang, bang. Man, I'm looking all bang now. Couple minutes for the gang, spit slang so man, I'm looking at pack down. Come around with a big man vibe, get a 2-2 slap and a bigger man pat down. It's foreign beggars and a bruck out thing, man, I shut down shop in a little man background. I'm a straight up breakout. Worldwide shut down, I'm a breakout. Big moves, big G's, I'm a breakout. More tracks, more racks for the breakout. More food, man, I'm looking like takeout. Now fools like cookies at a stakeout. Bare bites for the lash for the breakout. Gang, it's a breakout.
for a name. Seen a lot of man look for the likes, the things people do for the fame, the things people do to remain in view when the game's askew. This is strange. Me, I peep the whole scene from a distance, which I unfold frame by frame. I've been steady up in levels, training heavy with the rebels while they're dealing with the devil. I'm out dealing out the heckles like my skin was made of metal. I've been raising hell out here in the jungle. Pick up my brothers who stumble. That shit ain't nothing. I couldn't break down to rubble. That's just how the cookie crumbles. Break out.
I'm a straight up breakout. Worldwide shut down, I'm a breakout. Big moves, big G's, I'm a breakout. More tracks, more racks for the breakout. More food, man, I'm looking like takeout. Now fools like cookies at a stakeout. Bare bites for the lash for the breakout. Breakout, gang, 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 it's a breakout.
we've begun. A story once told cannot be undone, and I can't read what you're telling me. It's so clear to see. Well, it's so easy. Look at you and I just know, but it's not easy to step aside and let you go. It's never easy to say a thing that might be a whole different story, whole different story now. It's a whole different story now. It's a whole different story now. Find out. We've got so much that we can work out. There's still so much that we can find out. We've got so much that we can work out. There's still so much that we can find out. It's a whole different story now. It's a whole different story now.
We left this town with the speakers loud and the radio playing old Sublime that we stole online, every verse we know. And we hadn't had a clue if we'd make it by noon or even where we'd go. We don't need a map, everywhere is home. We don't need a map, everywhere. The tank said E and we all agreed that we're just too broke. Fill it back up, so we left your truck on the road with Rome. Then we found a motel with a cigarette smell, so we knew we're close. We don't need a map, everywhere is home. We don't need a map, everywhere is home. Is where I can find some peace of mind and make my own way. I don't know where I will end up, but I'll find it someday. Keep on searching, engine burning while we're turning it around. But don't get left behind on the road. But don't get left behind on the road. Don't get left behind on the road. Don't get left behind on the road. And we turn our music up when he raps about hope. We hold our thumbs high and hope someone is kind enough to give us all a ride. And we wouldn't have a clue if we'd make it back to or even where we'd go. But we don't need a map, everywhere is home. A Ford stopped on the street, said where you trying to be. We said we don't really care. We'll know it when we're there. We took on down the road. He flipped on his radio. Santeria started slow, so we knew that we were close. Home is where I can find some peace of mind and make my own way. I don't know where I will end up, but I'll find it someday. Keep on searching, engine burning while we're turning it around. But don't get left behind on the road. Don't get left behind on the road. Home is where I can find some peace of mind to make my way. I don't know where I will end up, but I'll find it someday. Keep on searching, engine burning while we're turning it around. But don't get left behind on the road.
Work, soldier.
Generation Orange in 5, 4, 3, 2.
Must have got your mic this week.
Hello, everybody, and I shall lower that in a little bit.
I was going to say that.
How are you guys doing? How's the chat doing right now? Welcome back to another episode of Generation Orange, your Houston soccer internet show and podcast. And
That's right. You did well. I like that I didn't have to do that one this week. That was nice.
Well, anyways, so I know we're kind of sad. And
Why are you doing the like broadcast style hold the mic thing?
Because I didn't feel like getting the.
Oh, all right. I mean, I'm just curious. It just very.
I was kind of a role from last night.
I feel like we're like about to go live at a soccer match, and you're like broadcasting live.
But no, actually, that would have happened if we actually had the green screen with the BBVA compass. That'd be awesome. But
I was gonna. Okay, keep going. You're good.
Yeah. So yesterday, it became official. The Houston Dynamo are eliminated from MLS Cup playoffs.
They lasted longer than RGV.
Yeah, I wasn't even saying it, to make fun.
I know.
But what I was actually going to say is Houston Dynamo are eliminated, and all of the haters that disappeared after the Open Cup final have reappeared again on social media.
It's we'll talk about that a little bit. I think a little bit later, but it's interesting to me that I think right now the big focus is on how much money the Dynamo spend. And it's really interesting from an ownership standpoint that that's the focus, right? Because there's enough evidence out there to say exactly what Kennedy said on the call, exactly what's been tweeted out multiple times now. Thank you, Wilson, for that. That, look, the Dynamo are not going to be a team that are going to spend a lot on salaries. But what they're going to do is they're going to bring in players that command high transfer fees because they're young international players that have the capacity and have the talent ceiling to become superstars on the international stage. We're not bringing in Zlatan Ibrahimovic because we're looking for the next Zlatan Ibrahimovic to bring into our team that we could actually keep around longer than 1 or 2 years as they're fading instead of instead of where our players are rising. You look at Amaro Manotas. This kid came in and he was nothing when he came in. He had shots with the Mbappe's not happening. Cisco, nice, but they did say they would spend a lot of money on young transfer players. I mean, that could always happen. You look at Morrow. He came in at 20 years old, 19 years old when he came into the Dynamo. He's spent 4 years here now, and you look at what he's become. He's a valid, 100% authentic MLS striker. And I don't think there's a doubt that he is the best striker on this team. He was the best striker last year on this team, and he's probably been the best striker talent-wise that we've had on this team since Brian Chang. And that's no discredit to like a Will Bruin or a Giles Barnes. But look, Mario Manotas at his age is already equaling what their goal total outputs were year over year. So he's not even 23 yet, and he's already doing that. So he still has room to continue to grow. So I just wish that those fans out there would do their research. And I'm not asking you to go and spend hours diving into how much a player costs or anything like that. Look, let us do the research for you. We're happy to do that. All I'm saying is do the due diligence to at least read what the hell is out there. There are plenty of people talking about where the money's going, where the salaries are. Hey, we don't pay a lot in salaries because we bring in young players. Guess what? Young players don't command $100,000, $200,000, $300,000, $400,000 salaries. They command actually they probably do command $200,000 salaries, but they don't command anything more than that because they're young. What it allows us to do is bring in 3, 4, 5 of those players for the cost of one Zlatan Ibrahimovic per season. Mm-hmm. So that means when Zlatan's gone next season or in 2 seasons from LA and he's retired into the sunset, guess what? Those players we brought in are still here. They're still in our system. So we're talking over 2 years of Zlatan at LA Galaxy, which, by the way, are they doing anything this season? believe the answer to that is possibly to playoffs, but that's probably about as far as that goes. Unless he suddenly takes over the entire league out of nowhere.
Unless he clones himself into 10 other Slottons, and I highly
or
doubt.
just does what he talks about and lays the seed, spreads the seed across America, which he talked about doing as well.
Yeah.
But I mean, it just comes down to the simple fact of we're not going to pay high price for high price players. What we're going to do is we're going to bring in young players that are to some extent unproven on the international stage, but they've had experience in the U20s and the U17s and the U16s and the U15s and the U14s. They've come up in these youth international systems in international or in national team systems that are proven national team systems that are proven to create authentic, very talented players. Colombian striker pool for the national team is ridiculously deep, and they are very good at creating strikers. So if you're bringing in a young international Colombian player that played for the Colombian youth national teams, then it is very likely that that player is going to be decent, if not very good. So that's how Mauro has turned into Mauro. Mm-hmm. You look at the same thing with Venezuela. Venezuela now is showing the pedigree year over year that they are producing striker talent out of Venezuela. So what did we do? We went and got a young, international, up-and-coming Venezuelan striker that honestly, in the few minutes he's gotten this season, has looked very good. He was unfortunately not in last night's match because he got injured in warm-ups. But at the same time, it's just this consistent process. And I love it because what does this mean for the Dynamo system in general? It means that we're going to see talent across the board, not just with the Dynamo senior team for the next 2 years, but now we're talking about the Dynamo affiliate in RGV. We're talking about the Dynamo affiliate in Brazos Valley. We're talking about the Dynamo affiliate throughout all of their ranks. They're going to bring in players no matter what their age is, under 23, under 24 years old, and fit them in their system where it makes the most sense. So it gives time for those players to develop in the Dynamo way. What that also means is that those players, newsflash, they're going to be dedicated to the Dynamo. That means that they're going to be embracing the Dynamo culture from early on. That means it's going to be ingrained into who they are. You think we have passionate Dynamo players now? Wait 5 years. I'm telling you, in 5 years, the players that we're going to have on that pitch, maybe not on the senior team, but at RGV, at Brazos Valley, they're going to be super passionate about the Dynamo brand and about playing for the Dynamo.
Yeah, especially with the fact, I mean, you got to look at it also, in the psychological point of view, which is like, this team, this organization has given them the opportunity to be in the spotlight of a bigger market compared to the Venezuelan league, compared to the Colombian league. It gives them an opportunity to shine, gives them, a better credibility in the international scale. Who knows? There's a higher probability that these players might emigrate in the future, if they do continue to do good here in the United States, to emigrate to Europe.
Yeah,
maybe a small team, but to Europe nonetheless. They might not have the same opportunities if let's say Fuenmayor stayed in the Venezuelan league.
Oh yeah, I mean it's look, there are teams in Europe that do their scouting in South America and mostly South America, really not as much Central America, but a lot in South America. And these are players that have been linked with some of those, maybe not necessarily larger clubs, but some of those very good quality academy systems overseas. So again, these are players that absolutely have the talent to be top tier players maybe not top tier in the world, but top tier at least in the echelon that MLS is. And if you can have those players for 5, 6, 7 years at minimal salaries, it's not about saving money. At that point, it's about smart business. Because guess what? If I can have 5 or 6 of those players for the cost of 2 Zlatans, I've now got a far better team than I would have had if I had gone Zlatan.
Yeah, because it's all a probability. I mean, yeah, you bought 5 players. Let's say 3 of them make it, compared to let's say you bring 1 Zlatan, and let's say he doesn't have the impact that you thought. You already wasted a lot of money.
You've wasted 3 or 4 players essentially. So the way I look at it is this, and it's really, really simple, and I want you guys to keep this in mind. The difference between the approach from the Dynamo and the approach for LA Galaxy or Seattle or New York Red Bulls, for instance, is very, very, or Sporting Kansas City, I think, falls in this category as well. It's different. The reasoning is very simple. if one of those top tier players on a team that they're the star struggles in a match, that team usually struggles. If Zlatan is not on, LA Galaxy are usually not one of the best teams on the pitch.
Yeah.
If if Gutierrez for SKC is not having a good match, SKC is a decent team, but not a great team. For New York Red Bulls, if Bradley Wright Phillips is struggling, they struggle. And so, I say struggle. It doesn't mean that they're losing. It just means that their form is not as good as it is when those superstars are on the money.
And here's the thing, because there was also some comments made, and we talked about it in the Dynamo Discord, about people complaining, well, it's because we don't pay a lot in salaries. It's like, oh, okay, so if I pay Morrow, let's say double what he's being paid right now, all of us, is he going to score the double of goals he scored right now? No, we're wasting money in that aspect. And then you say, well, we need to bring in starting 11 quality players for our bench.
Oh yeah, that was crazy.
That is not going to happen under a salary cap.
So look, where that discussion came out of is I saw a couple of tweets, and I hope Victor's not watching because I'm about to call his ass out.
No.
Victor and Aaron, at least I think it was Aaron from Texian Army. What's up, Darby? They were talking on Twitter about how the Dynamo should have planned for the injuries and they should have planned for the FIFA international break. Here's my problem with that very stupid take. The Dynamo could not plan for a match that was rescheduled as a result of what was happening in Seattle in terms of the NFL match and something else, and a concert that was going on and something else that took place, and the international dates for CONCACAF Champions League that Seattle unfortunately had to reschedule the original match. This match was not supposed to take place yesterday. This match was supposed to take place months ago. So all I'm saying is, how stupid does that sound to say, oh, they should have planned for that? You cannot plan for a FIFA international date better than they did, which is to say, hey, we don't have a match. I'm supposed to plan to know that I'm going to have a freaking match on an international date that I don't have one already scheduled for? Come on, people, grow up, be smarter.
Newsflash, Magic 8 Balls don't work.
Neither do Psychic Readings, but we'll get to that later. So Cisco says something important too, and Cisco is our man on the ground, if you will. He learned this past week or the week before that Houston Sports Park is not actually owned by the Dynamo. It's kind of partially owned by the Parks and Rec department for the city, essentially, or Houston Sports Authority, possibly, so that they can make money off it, but. The end result of why that's important and why that's important to know is Dynamo don't have control over when they can practice. I mean, they can say, hey, we're going to practice at this time, and they have their one pitch, but sometimes that pitch is closed for various reasons. Sometimes there's various other reasons. I also knew this ahead of time, but it's, before this was released, but I figured I would share it because there are some of you that don't know that.
I didn't know that.
And so they also don't have control over their facilities there. And that means if there's a tournament or something going on and the Dynamo are practicing, the Dynamo don't have first rights to those facilities. And so it's a weird relationship. It is. And I hope that improves over time. I don't know what the next step for that part of it is. And maybe the next question for that actually goes to someone like Frank, whose last name I don't remember off the top of my head, and I'm sure he's not watching anyways, who is part of the operations. He's like vice president of operations or something. He's actually quite high in the organization, but he handles a lot of BBVA related stuff and Dynamo operations related stuff. So that may be a question for him, but it's just. That is a little bit of a microcosm of the things that concern me from the organization. Not concern me in the short term, concern me in the long term. I have zero concern in short term. I really don't. I look at next season. I look at the end of this season, and I know you feel the same way at this point. I am not upset at how this season has ended. Number one, we were in it until this week. Number two, even with the struggles that we had, even with the injuries we've had, even with the international call-ups we've had, this team has been competitive, maybe not as competitive as we wanted, but still competitive week in and week out. The final thing, we won Open Cup, so fuck all of you. Sorry, I had to get that out of my system.
I don't know. I don't think I'm as positive as you are, and
what is there not to be positive? I want to know, what is there not to be positive about? What is it that concerns you most as you look at this team? Oh yeah, Cisco. No, Sean's done holding back. He's at the end of the season. I'm tired of hearing the bullshit. It's time to. Sean's pulling out the freaking fingers and freaking fangs, man. I'm going for blood.
I think I'm not going to say anything anymore. I don't want to get beat up.
No, you're not going to get beat up. I want to hear. I want people to hold on. Here, let me say this. I want people to share their frustrations and their concerns, but I want people to have an open mind about it. So share your concern and just know I'm going to beat you down about it.
By the way, speaking of that, phone lines are open, so be sure to give us your takes.
956-622-5977. That's right. I remember that damn phone number. 956-622-5977.
Yes, so be sure to voice your concerns. Also, my concern has, and it continues to...
And if you call in, I promise not to speak over you. I will continue to speak over Edson, but I won't speak over you on the phone line. Okay, you can go ahead, Edson. I'm sorry.
So what I was going to say is, like, it's something that continues to irk me, and I know we talked about it many times, said, oh, well, it's normal with American soccer, but it's just that the road record.
That's fair.
The road record, I think, needs to be improved, whether you have your starting 11, whether you have your backups playing. You know, it was the same thing, even if we had Elise and Kyoto. And that, I think we talked about it last time, saying it might have something to do with how conservative Wilmer plays on the road.
And I think that's something that Wilmer can adjust. I mean, let's be real. That's something that he can approach and he can take away from this season and say, maybe I played a little too conservatively on the road. Maybe I told my guys to sit back a little bit too much. We tried to absorb too much pressure. But that ultimately falls to Wilmer. To me, that's not a club issue. That's a Wilmer issue. And look, every coach has issues. There's not a coach out there that especially MLS coach, maybe Matthias Almeida, who we'll get into later. But there's not an MLS coach right now out there that I go, man, that coach, well, Mike Petke might be the literal only MLS coach. But there's not a coach out there that I go, man, that coach has no flaws. Like he game plans and tactics like perfectly. There's not coaches out there that are like that. There's very few, if any at all. And so I think it's very likely that we're going to see continuing that. And I mean, again, it is an MLS related issue too. MLS on the whole struggles with away matches. It's common. But I agree, we have to do better. But I also think we do better with Cabezas in the lineup and not having, and I know that's huge to pin your entire season on the well-being of one player, but that's kind of like the Texans and Deshaun Watson. If you think about it, Cabezas is kind of like our freaking quarterback at this point. He is the one directing play on the pitch. He is the one controlling play on the pitch. And essentially, if that guy goes down, which he did, if that guy goes down and is out for the rest of the season, how do the Texans do this season? 0 wins, almost guaranteed. Maybe 1 if they get lucky, but probably not. So I look at the season, and that's exactly how I see it, is your quarterback went down for the season, and your backup quarterback was crap. And to be fair, when you have a quarterback that is a good enough quality like Cabezas is, you're probably not going to have a superstar backup. And there's no team in the NFL that has a superstar backup except maybe Philly. But that's a rarity in the league. You look at Philly, right? And when I say Philly, I'm referring to the Eagles. You look at Philly, and they've got Wentz and they've got Foles. Well, I mean, the reality is there's no other team in the league that has that level of talent and at backup quarterback. And even the Patriots had to get rid of their backup quarterback that was supposed to be the next Tom Brady because of the way the salary cap works. You cannot afford to have superstars sitting on the bench in this league because of the way that the salary budget works.
Yeah.
Okay.
So adding on to that, and I mentioned this as well in the Discord chat. Mm-hmm. Let's take a look at, let's say, Tigres. Liga MX, there's no salary cap.
No, there's not.
Okay.
Thank God.
So a lot of people are saying, going back to the point of why don't we have starting 11 quality backups? Mm-hmm. Here's the thing. Tigres, you technically have 2 starting 11s in their roster. Mm-hmm. Even our backups and our reserves are players that for the most part can play as a starter in every other team in Liga MX.
Yeah.
But what's the problem? Let's focus in the attack. We have Gignac. We have Sosa, Valencia, Edu Vargas, Jurgen Damm, Javier Aquino. We can only
what
play.
he said, guys. What he said.
We can only play 3 up on top. So usually it's Gignac, Jurgen, and Aquino. So you have Valencia and you have Edu Vargas, international stars for Liga MX, but international stars nonetheless, stars in their national teams on the bench. What we have to deal with? You have to deal with egos. Last Saturday, Edu Vargas stormed out of the stadium in disgust because he was left out of the 18. So why, like, that's not going to happen, and much less when we have a salary cap.
I mean, you say that, but how many times is Kyoto?
No. What I mean is along the lines of like bringing in like starting 11 quality players for our bench. It's not going to happen here.
No. Well, and I mean, we say that, but Ronaldo Peña's on our bench, and there are teams that would probably take Peña as their top striker. To be totally honest with you, I'm not saying he would be the first choice for most teams, but there are some teams that would still take him. Cisco says Elise was sitting on the bench in Monterrey, so he was a backup.
He was a backup, but I knew he wasn't going to be.
But I mean, you know how young he was even at that point. I mean, let's be real.
He was at 19.
Yeah, 19, and at that point too, internationally, he was just becoming kind of recognized, and it was because of his work with the youth team, not because of his work on the first senior team. Mm-hmm. So he still hadn't reached that point where within Liga MX he was going to be that next player. He was going to be a backup in Liga MX. And I think if you look at it, that is, and I think you kind of summarized why CCL gives me heartache, because I look at the rosters of Liga MX with the lack of salary cap versus the rosters of MLS with the salary budget. And what I see are 2 totally different approaches to how you have to handle tournaments. With MLS, you usually want to play your youngest players and your reserves during tournaments. In Liga MX, like you said, you have a total starting 11 as your second tier team, essentially. So you can afford to play those same players, those second tier players, in your tournament and swap and back and forth. In MLS, when you do that, the drop off in talent level, it's huge. It's not substantial, but it's substantial enough. That's the key. It's substantial enough that it becomes that much tougher. When you're dealing with the starting 11 in CCL play, when you're playing a CCL and you're playing a team like Tigres, that their starting 11 is good enough to start for most Liga MX teams. It's kind of like they're good enough to start. They are good enough to start for any MLS team in this league. And so you're playing against a starting 11 that's far better than you probably are going into CCL because your players need rest. And now we're going to get a little bit lucky because these matches are earlier in the preseason, the first few of them anyways. I think we will be able to show up with our full starting 11 out the gate, and that will be good for us because we can use them as tune-up matches. And we've seen that in preseason, when our starting 11 is out there, they are very good. They played very well in the preseason. Unfortunately, we had 2 very key injuries in the first week of the preseason, or first week of the season, and the last week of preseason that just carried over throughout almost the entire season and really derailed a lot of what we were trying to do.
Yeah.
And let's not forget also we had Remick lined up to be that outside back, that player at outside back that was going to be the one that was going to rotate with Beasley for the entire season. Easy to forget, right? It's been a whole season. And let's be honest, the guy's not coming back. He wants to, I guarantee you. But at this point, you've got Lundqvist, you've got AJD. Beasley, even if he doesn't come back, that's still 2 starters. Remick's possibility of starting for this team is extremely low. What else? What other concerns do you have? By the way, Jay will be calling in momentarily, so he should be. We're waiting.
Yeah, we got like about 4 minutes.
Well, no, I told him 7:30 on the nose, so we got 4
fine.
minutes. Yeah. So, what other concerns do you have? I want to address all your concerns, and look. I mean, this is coming from a guy who last night was apoplectic about what was going on, partially because I just can't stand Alvarez, and as good a pickup as I thought he would be, he has underwhelmed me just considerably. I can't even put into words how underwhelming he's been. And I don't think the team expected to have to put so much weight on his shoulders throughout this season. I think they knew that they were going to have enough players to cover. and then he's just been forced into action in places he really shouldn't have been forced into, and he hasn't lived up to what he should have lived up to.
Carlos says he's concerned about our fan base.
I'm not, and here's why. Because I think if the team comes out early next season, if they go out in CCL and they have a good CCL showing in the first couple of CCL matches and those elimination matches, they come out in the early part of the season and they're winning the first 3 or 4 matches, or they're keeping them really close and it's exciting soccer, I guarantee you the fans are going to show back up. Look, we're not going to sell a ton of season tickets this offseason. I think it's going to be light compared to even last season. But I do think that there's enough to buy into with this team, especially if they're winning. That let's be real, Houston fans are fair weather, and some Houston fans are fair weather. I don't want to stereotype because there's a lot of good Houston fans out there, but there are fair weather fans in Houston, and there's a good number of them in Houston.
In all sports.
In all sports, basketball, baseball, football as well, for sure, without a doubt, and soccer, but. Regardless of that, they're still going to show up if the team wins, and that's all you're trying to do, is trying to have a team that wins consistently enough that they're drawing in enough fans to keep the seats filled as much as possible. And I think we do that next season. I really do. I think that this offseason is perfectly set up for us because, again, we're bringing back the majority of the same players we had last season and the season before that. With 1 or 2 additions here or there, instead of 2 seasons ago, where we came off a really terrible season and we overhauled the entire 11 sans like 2 players. This season, we're going to come in next season with a lot of the same players.
Which is funny because it's the same thing I said last night to the guys at San Antonio regarding RGV. But it was basically a whole
but that's
organization-wide movement.
That's the idea, is that you're not having to. And I know I said this to you, and I kind of said it the other way around. That part of what the Dynamo plan to do is ultimately they want to be recycling players. They're cycling players through the system as much as possible, which means you're going to see a lot of movement between the teams, like going up. But the idea is that they're not going to need to replenish the Dynamo roster. They're going to need to replenish RGV. But the good thing is, because the Dynamo have a consistent starting 11 right now that is good enough, they may not need to bring up as many of those RGV players, which means you should have your same RGV players next season, which means Carlos Small is going to get another opportunity with chemistry, with time, gelling with these players, with an entire preseason underneath his belt, with the attack the way that it is. And let's be real, that attack is very potent when it's on. And I think with 1 more season together, that attack can be the best attack in USL next season. USL Championship. I got to clarify that now, which I love. I love that they did that. With that being said, it is 7:30, Jay. I'm waiting for you, bro.
You want to talk in the meantime a little bit about last night's match?
We can. I was trying to avoid the depressing part of the show. So the Dynamo did things, and Seattle did more things. Bruin scored, of course, which, all the more power to him. He's a great player. He deserves it. He's a great guy. He deserves it. But Joe Willich had a howler of a game, in my opinion. I don't think he was positionally as strong as I've seen him in the past. I felt like there were saves there to be made that he just wasn't making. Now, don't get me wrong. He was left on an island a couple times, but he just looked uncomfortable back there. And I think that comes from the wet turf. That's hard on a keeper, and it showed for Joe, in my opinion. I think if that match was played here on grass, even if it was wet, I think that match ends completely different.
You have better footing with natural grass.
You do. Well, not
because
only
you
that,
but you at least have the spikes actually get on the dirt. You get grip there.
Yeah.
Whereas in turf, it's all plastic and wet plastic.
And you slip. I mean, you consistently slip, and it's hard to, as a goalkeeper, it is hard to position yourself better because you're basing. When you're playing on grass, you have a specific amount of reaction time before the ball gets to you. On turf, that reaction time is reduced significantly. On wet turf, even more, because you don't have the grip. Hey, look, there he is. He's calling in. This is Generation Orange.
Hello, this is Jay Adelberg. Am I calling the right number?
You are. Generation Orange. That's our podcast, bro. Come on now. Killing me, Smalls.
What's going on?
How are you doing, Jay? I have questions for you. I know I didn't send them to you, but that's okay. I think you'll appreciate these.
I can wing it.
That's good. That's good. I'm glad to hear that. All right, so let's just dive right into your questions. Everybody knows who you are. Everybody on our chat loves you. Some may dislike you just because you're so over the top, but you know what? They can kiss my you know what. I'm going full heel mode, by the way. I've had it with some quote unquote fans, so I'm totally on board. First question for you, Jay.
I listened to the last 20 minutes, and that had occurred to me.
Yes. No, I'm so done and so through with the crap that's out there right now. It's not even funny anymore. So first question for you: with the Dynamo officially out of the playoffs, we all need a bit of a reminder of why we should continue to support this team through the remaining home match and away matches of this season. So I'm asking you, Jay, this is your opportunity. Hype us up.
Well, I mean, look, I could cut a crazed promo about and get all brother on you, but I don't think that's really the case at this point. Because I mean, if anyone who's listening to this is familiar with the mantra, it's anyone can support a team that wins all the time, and it's the true test of your fandom is going to be if you can stick with the team no matter what. And now is the time where, with the U.S. Open Cup, that was a very unexpected and fantastic result that we got out of this year. And for the sake of pride, for the sake of the fact that our players feel passionate about playing for the Dynamo and feel good about representing the badge, and they want to do right by the fans and go out with their heads held high. These guys are professional athletes who have a lot of tremendous pride in what they do, and I have every reason to think that they will battle until the final whistle.
I think you are 100% correct. I think, especially with the possibility that this may be Beasley's last match at home, I think it just adds something extra for the players on the pitch. I think there's no doubt if this is potentially Beasley's last match at home, that fans need to come out and support the guy that's bled and sweat and cried on that freaking pitch time after time after time, match after match after match, season after season after season. And literally left it all on the pitch for Open Cup. I'm elated that he got that Open Cup because I think that's almost the perfect note for him to go out on. I think the perfect note would have been MLS Cup to combine with it, but beggars can't be choosers. We'll take what we got. But I do look at that final match on the 21st of October, and I go and I circle that match, and I go, look, we need fans to come out, and we need fans to come out strong. And it's not so much, because we need to win. It has nothing to do with that. It has everything to do with, first of all, come out and show these players that you give a damn. Second of all, come out and support the fact that they won Open Cup. And third of all, come out and support Beasley in his potentially, probably last home match of his career. You can't get more out of a match than that, other than a championship match or other than an actual retirement match. And so I wanted the opportunity to give you, or I wanted to give you the opportunity, to pitch what's going on out there. And so are there any special packages or ticket offers or anything like that are available for the final home match of the season that our listeners or non-listeners who happen to somehow find out from other listeners that may be going on?
I have a small wheel on my desk, prize wheel, that has on it 5 different potential awesome ticket deals.
Oh.
If people call me, I will spin the wheel, and they can get whatever it lands on.
That's pretty cool. Do
That
you
is
want to tell
awesome.
us what some of those may be instead of just leaving us the mystery wheel of prizes?
Nope. It's a complete mystery wheel of
You
prizes
get
and
a
prizes.
free car.
You get an Elise bobblehead that everybody nerdy has. No, I'm just kidding. That's actually awesome because I know knowing Jay that those prizes are phenomenal prizes and the packages tied to that are phenomenal as well. That you're not going to find better discounts or anything like that. Also, Jay, out of curiosity, if there are those fans that are out there that are listening to this show or listening to the podcast, and they're like, man, I need to buy season tickets because I've slacked off and haven't done it, or I was not going to renew and now I'm listening to this and I'm going, man, there's a lot to actually be excited about, or whatever it may be. Do you have anyone that you can pass them to, or anyone you can tell them to call or email to get hooked up with season tickets for next season? Or are those even on sale yet?
They are. They are on sale. We have locations and pricing for the entire stadium. And if you are a current season ticket holder, of course, you would want to contact your service rep and let your service rep know that you're interested.
And if they don't know if they don't know who that is, who do they reach out to?
It's very easy to find out. I'm fine to give my email out over the air, and if anyone wants to email me and say hi, I'm sorry, I just don't know who my rep is, I'm happy to look it up and send them their rep's contact information, email, and phone number.
Perfect.
So that email address for me, by the way, is the letter J, and then my last name, which is Adelberg, Adelberg. That's Apple, David, everything, Loverboy, B, Adelberg. Why did I go there? I can't even couldn't think of letters. I couldn't think of my own letters.
Was that part of your heel shtick when you were a pro wrestler? Because it sure sounded very natural.
That went off the rails in a terrible way. Like, I used to know the military one, the Alpha, Beta, Delta, and Charlie. Yeah, I couldn't remember it. So anyway, Adelberg, J. Adelberg at HoustonDynamo.com. I'll find out who your rep is.
Fantastic,
now,
awesome.
If you are a new customer, someone who has never purchased season tickets before, or someone who may have had them in the past, has not had them recently, and wishes to get back into them, I can help you with that. So I don't. We actually, all our salespeople at the Dynamo are full menu. So I specialize in groups. I do mostly groups, but I can also sell season tickets and get paid a commission on them. I don't have to hand them over to somebody else.
That's nice. So if you want season tickets, call up Jay. Call up Jay. I'm sure he'll be like, "Oh, sure, I'll take care of you for sure." If you don't already have a rep, anyways.
Exactly. You tell me where you want to sit in the stadium, and I'll tell you every open seat in that area.
There you go. So let's see. Obviously we've talked about the Circle of Suck, and it seems like right now there's a very strong pull from the Circle of Suck, and I'm sure you'll agree. Granted, that pull is primarily on social media, and you've mentioned many times about what fans who don't want to continue the Circle of Suck and don't want to continue feeding the Circle of Suck need to do. And so I was hoping you would re-elaborate on that, because I do think our listeners have really taken that to heart genuinely based on conversations with many of them. And we are doing everything we can to try to not only not feed that, but try to actually help change it and help reverse it into a circle of victory or something. I don't know what you would call that, but we don't want to call it the circle of blow because that goes a totally different place.
Wow.
It's the circle of awesome.
Oh, there you go, circle of awesome. There you go. That works.
When everyth's going great, it's the circle of awesome, and everyone holds hands and sings "Kumbaya" and "Tra-la-la" down the lane. It's a thing of beauty. So the most important thing that fans can do to not be part of the Circle of Suck, obviously, is show up. It reverberates. Their presence reverberates to every other part of the circle in a positive way. It reverberates to ownership, that even when the team is struggling, that the fans are going to support this club and that it is worth investing. And just for the side, while our payroll may actually be the lowest in the league, what we've paid in transfer fees in the last couple of years, which is a considerable amount of money,
absolutely
not figured into that.
Yeah, no.
So I think that's an important caveat when you discuss being the lowest payroll in the league. I digress.
We actually did, just so you know, we did discuss that at the very top of the show, and that was a point that I brought up.
I missed the first.
Oh, you're good.
The first few minutes. I apologize.
No, you're fine. Please continue. I want to say this, Jay. It helps reinforce that. Guess what? That is real and that is true, and I'm not dumb. So continue on. It's great.
Oh, fantastic! All right, good. Listen. If I can do nothing tonight but provide some validation for you, my friend, I will feel that this was time well spent.
Jay, this drink is for you, good sir.
So the circle, so that's how it reverberates to ownership. But also, and you and I have said this to you many times, and I know you already agree with what I'm about to say, but if you are the type of player that you as a Dynamo fan want to see come to the Dynamo, if you are watching the Dynamo play their biggest rivals in a half-empty stadium, what about that says to you, that's the team I want to sign for?
That's fair.
Right?
That's fair.
But if you see a fan base like, again, the example I always have to use is Portland, who show up, whether that team is in first place or last place, and are excited to be there and invested in the team emotionally and making their best efforts to actually affect the outcome of the game, which is what they're doing there. That's the kind of place you want to plug into. That's the kind of environment where you say, I can't sign fast enough to get down there and do that. And not only that, but the truth is, one of the things that we can do nothing about here in Houston is it's hot. It's always going to be hot. It's going to suck, and it's going to be hot. So we need something special to convince players who may go, I don't know, it's kind of hot down there, that there's no doubt in their minds that they want to come here, that this is the place that they need to be. We understand we don't have the city appeal of Los Angeles or New York or Chicago or Miami. I've lived in several of those cities. I know how cool they are, and I know that it's different here. It's a different vibe. It's a different place. It's a different way of life in Houston, Texas. And so the one thing that the fans can affect the most, because they can't affect what Houston as a city is like, they can't affect the weather, but they can affect the atmosphere in the stadium. And that is the kind of thing that could be a deciding factor on the kind of players they want to see come here, whether they say yes or whether they say no.
I think that's very fair. I also want to tack on this thought as well as we go into the off season and prep for next season. There are going to be players that we're playing against in CCL play that are potential targets for the Dynamo. And these could be very good quality players. And it will serve the team, it will serve the city, and it will serve the organization very well if fans show up and support the team to potentially go after those players that are potential targets for the team. And, you know, if we don't show up, if fans don't show up and it's a 2,000 or 3,000 fan turnout, those players are going to look at that and go, well, they don't care, so why should I go there? Those are players that potentially could be looked at by other teams as well. And if we're competing with other teams, we need to offer the best opportunities we can. And for fans, like you said, it's very simple. Show up and support the current players, the current team, regardless of the situation, because that offers opportunities for other players to come in because they've seen that you're still going to support no matter how bad or how good the team may be. And they know that if they do struggle, you're not going to just, try to kick them out of the city. You're going to embrace them and they're going to feel like they're part of the family. And that's what the Dynamo are. They are a family. And so I just wanted to add that from a CCL perspective going into next season.
Absolutely. I agree with everything you just said. For sure. For sure. And you know that there are bench players all over Liga MX who feel like they're good enough to be a first-team player who would jump at an opportunity to prove that somewhere.
Absolutely. I mean, Albert Elise was one of those players. He was playing for Monterrey. He was on their bench pretty consistently, and he had the opportunity to come here. Granted, it was on loan, but he had the opportunity to come here and prove that he was good enough to be not only a starter, but good enough to be one of the better players in MLS. And look what he's turned into, one of the better players in MLS.
The image.
And he's now the face of the franchise. I mean, without a doubt, in my opinion. And so it's those types of players that we want to draw in, and it's not going to happen if the stadium consistently is empty. Jay constantly references, that creates a circle of suck. It creates a black hole of emptiness that nobody can escape from. So we have to address it now, and we have to address it as best we can as fans.
RGV, this includes you as well.
Absolutely. Dude, if RGV shows out consistently, even when the team is struggling or even when the team's not, I guarantee you that there's going to be players that are looking at that and seeing opportunities, and they may be players that, I don't know, that are going to San Antonio right now that would not go to San Antonio because guess what? They actually embrace the fan base and vice versa.
Please don't remind me of that Escalante ordeal.
Sorry, bro. It has to happen.
Like he literally mentioned.
What about
that.
Charlie Ward? What about Sebastian Iviaga? Do I need to continue or are you good?
No, because Escalante specifically mentioned, like, I'd rather be playing for San Antonio than in front of orange seats.
Well, I mean, that's fine. He can do that.
No, I know. I just don't remind me of that.
All
right, let's
make
continue.
More money in MLS, but that's not between you and me. I don't really care. So, Jay, I got another question for you.
Sour grapes.
Pretty much. Yeah. You're not going to always, there are going to be players that, and you said it earlier, Edson, that have egos. And it's hard to feed every ego. You're going to have players that just end up having a bad experience. It happens. And it's not necessarily, it can be a reflection of the organization, but it doesn't have to be a reflection of the organization. It can just be that they had a bad experience. Cisco, I'm talking to you, just so you know. So, final question for you, Jay. Although we'll probably go a little bit longer.
Is it wrestling related?
No, it's not. No, this is actually not.
Okay,
I think
all
you'll
right.
appreciate this question, but I'm going to make you think here a little bit. Jay,
geez.
what do you
Had a
want?
long day.
You're going to love this question then. What do you want to see happen this offseason with the Dynamo? And when I ask that question, I'm saying I'm giving you, the keys to the kingdom. You have control over the entire organization. What do you want to see happen? It can be sales, service, on field, off field, fans, whatever. What do you want to see as Jay Adelberg happen with the Dynamo in this offseason?
Well, I mean, I think that a lot of things are going to happen that are exciting. I think that they're going to do some additional improvements to the stadium that are exciting. I think the improvements they've made in the last 2 years are fantastic.
Absolutely.
And everything heading in the right direction. Obviously, the whole East End. The South End turned out to be great. The international marketplace.
Yeah, it did.
They then let that 2 years ago, and then this year they expanded that out into improved food selections all over. Now, of course, Chick-fil-A is in the mix, which I understand that everyone does love the Chick-fil-A. While I don't eat Chick-fil-A,
Yes.
I don't begrudge anyone else that wants to enjoy Chick-fil-A. So I think I just managed to say Chick-fil-A about 6 times in under 12 seconds.
You did. How much are they paying you per? How much are they paying you per mention? I'm just curious.
It's funny because that's probably more times than I've said the words Chick-fil-A in my entire life leading
There's
up
7.
to this. But that's neither here nor there. So there's been some talk about adding some additional big fans on that end. So if any of those things come to fruition, or if any degree of those things come to fruition, I think those should be looked upon as great improvements. I know that Matt Jordan has been spending a tremendous amount of time on the road scouting players and looking for what's next and what's new. I mean, clearly we have some defensive holes that need to get filled up a little bit. We have some aging center backs, and we have a potentially retiring left back and a right back who's finally going to be coming back from injury shortly. So there's some young folks in there who I think have a ton of potential, like Fuenmayor. But clearly, with the Champions League on the horizon, we're going to need to strengthen that back line. I'm not terribly concerned about the goalkeeping situation. I think that whether it's Joe starting with Sightsee backing him up or with Tyler backing him up, I think we're fine there, so I'm not terribly worried about that. Cabezas appears to be back and doing well. Not worried about that situation. And I really like our front four very much. Clearly, we could use a little depth in that regard. Someone who is, Arturo Alvarez was brought in to be the new Vicente Sanchez, and as you mentioned before I came on, that hasn't really quite panned out as much as we would have hoped. So I think that perhaps finding a veteran player, someone who can fill that, what we can just call the Vicente Sanchez role next season, I think would be valuable. We saw what he brought to the table last year and what a great boost he was off the bench, and starting in spot situations as well. And other than that, obviously Mauro Manotas has blossomed into a superstar. I think Ronaldo Pena has a lot of potential upside. Whether it's Max Steves or another one, I'd like to see a third striker get in the mix there. I'm sure we will have to with the Champions League coming up next year. So I think those are a couple areas where you'll probably see some upgrades. I don't know how many miles Boniek's got left in the tank, but my guess is they might bring him back another year. Who knows? I mean, I'm not privy to that type of information, but it's clear as one of the older guys in the squad that he's starting to slow down.
Absolutely.
But still savvy, still great field vision. It can still drop a dime, but slowing down.
Yep.
And no different than really Rico Clark's situation,
or even I was going to say,
Again?
I was going to say that, realistically looking at next season, if you want someone to fill that Papa Sanchez role, that's Boney. Boney could perfectly fill that role because he still has enough in the tank to do that on occasion, but not consistently. Not consistently.
I don't know that he has quite the same footballing acumen.
Okay, that's
Sanchez
fair.
has.
That's fair. That's fair.
Sanchez was like an uncommon talent.
Yes.
You know what I mean? And I think that someone like that who's at the end of their career, who is a true uncommon talent, that's the kind of guy that you can get probably pretty cheap to come in and really fill that role.
I think that's fair. Yeah, that's fair.
And maybe
better
and maybe
yeah.
someone who is new to the team who can add some fresh perspective. I think Boney, having been part of this team since the days of the dinosaurs, it's possible that that if that's the role you're trying to fill, you might want some fresh eyes.
Absolutely. So we had a question that came in on the chat. Did you happen to get to? And I'm assuming you did, Jay. You got to listen to the conference call on Monday.
Okay, so funny, I actually did not.
Oh.
I had the opportunity to, but had to go to an appointment. I did read the live Twitter threading going on.
Oh yeah,
with the questions and such in there, and so I'm at least I'm going to go with mostly familiar with what they said, but it's entirely possible that I missed important things.
Oh sure.
But that being said, please proceed.
So the question basically was, what did you get out of that?
Well, I mean, number one, I hope that it bought some goodwill in the sense that, I understand that Chris and Matt Jordan don't make themselves visible on social media and things of that sort. So it was certainly an opportunity for folks to, ask them some questions to go from there. Most of the questions seemed to be what I generally expected. None of it really came as a surprise to me because a lot of it is just our kind of general thing. But I think that, this season could have very easily gone in the exact opposite direction. When we went into that July Philly game, it was a different story, and we all know what happened at that game, and then the KC game thereafter, and that created a tailspin and a negative vibe, and some of that was within our control, and some of it was not, and that could have easily gone the other way, and it could have been we could be having an entirely different conversation now, and I think that in general, I'm with you on this, Sean, that I feel good for the most part about most of the squad that we have. The players who concern me the most in their future are probably the players that concern you the most in their future.
Yeah.
I'm concerned about Senderos and his health and his age, and I'm concerned about Machado and his age, and but for the most part, almost across the board, all of the young talent that's come in the last 2 years has been fantastic with almost with minimal expectation.
Absolutely.
That's the amazing thing too, is when you bring in a guy like Juan David Cabezas, and the expectation is honestly the reaction is, well, who the hell is this guy? And he comes out and turns out to be one of the most valuable players in the team, then it certainly builds goodwill that when Matt Jordan says, hey, I think Ronaldo Pena is the real thing, that you're willing to give Ronaldo Pena a proper shot to prove that he is.
Absolutely. Or even a Carlos Small down at RGV that, again, Jordan brought in. I think you said it best. He's bought goodwill, and he's bought enough
Trust.
of a leash, if you will, enough trust. Yeah, trust. That's the word I'm looking for. Enough trust from fans at this point to say this guy can pick out talent. He can find talent, and he's good at finding talent that is those diamond in the roughs, if you will. They're not necessarily already the superstar or already the star for their team, but given time within a system, given time to show that they can become that with the right coaching, that they are becoming that. And I think we're seeing it with multiple players. And I think the thing is if we consider as these aging players leave the system or, retire and move on to other teams or whatever, that opens up more opportunities for Jordan to do that, which means instead of us just having 4 or 5 of those players on the roster, we're talking about 8 or 9 of those players on the roster. And now your roster is nothing but young, up-and-coming talent. And the rest of the league is gonna struggle against that because young and up and coming talent, they will run like hell at your ass until you fall on the freaking pitch tired. And there are enough aging center backs, Chad Marshall, that can't keep up with that level of pace anymore.
Right. I mean, and especially in a hot city like Houston.
Oh yes, I love that. Awesome.
Whereas where we, by the way, was it my imagination or was the game in Seattle last night played on a soaking wet shag carpet?
that wasn't shag, dude. That was like the floor mat outside my apartment. You know, like thin as hell and no grip. And if it's wet, dear God, hope you don't slip and fall on your butt. I mean, you know, it might as well have been vinyl flooring that was wet. You know, with a sign on the side of the pitch that says "slippery when wet." I mean, you know, and you know, I mentioned this earlier in the show, and I'm sure you heard this part, but. You know, there were fans out there that were like, well, the Dynamo should have planned ahead and known that they had this international date and these players were going to be injured. And my problem with that is,
I did hear this,
yeah, it's a rescheduled match. You can't plan for a rescheduled match. That doesn't, I'm sorry, like that just, I wanted to be like, are you dumb? Like, seriously, I can buy into what you're trying to get across, but that statement is just dumb. Anyways, I want to vent.
It's also a matter of, you know, a team that struggles on the road, missing its two best players away at a place where it's a strong playoff contending team on a wet rug. What did you expect the outcome?
Absolutely, and you know, and it came out today, or actually, I guess last night, that the referee actually at halftime went and apologized to the Dynamo players because he realized he got the quote unquote out of bounds call wrong. And blew the whistle when he really should have let play continue and then let VAR overrule it if needed.
Wait, so, I'm sorry. Was the call on the field that it went out of bounds?
Yes.
It wasn't that it was a handball.
No. It was out of bounds.
Out of bounds.
Yes, and that's exactly what AJ tweeted out. So that the referee said to them that the call I made was that it was out of bounds. I thought it had gone out of bounds. It did not. I apologize. You know, and we're actually going to talk about that here in just a minute. You know, and I think it's important as we close out this J segment to remember that you know, you can't change MLS referees, you can't change necessarily the players on the pitch right now because we're fans, we don't have that control. We can't change management, we can't change the front office, but what we can change is our attitude and our approach to the match. We can change our attitude and approach to supporting this club. And I think if we show out in droves, to be honest with you, I think ownership are maybe going to be a little more likely to spend a little more money. They're going to be more likely to foot the bill for a bigger name player because guess what? You're already showing that regardless of what happens, you're going to show up and you're going to, you know, you're going to be willing to pay some money to see that happen.
When people show up and making a big impact in the stadium, I assure you, every topic of conversation in the front office is, how do we do that again next time? And then how do we do that again the time after that?
That's fair.
That's the conversation that happens in the front office from the top down. Holy crap, that was fantastic. How do we make that happen again?
So I'm guessing that happened after the Zlatan match, I'm assuming?
Oh, sure. I mean, absolutely. It's, you know, it's exciting. It feels good. You know, everyone, I mean, especially the ending of that match, you couldn't have scripted it any better.
Beautiful, wasn't it?
And so, yeah, I mean, absolutely. That is the kind of environment that we want at every game. And, you know, it's like I said earlier, the fans in Portland are literally willing that team to go on with their energy. That team, there's no way that team doesn't feed off that game in and game out. You know that they do. It's how they end up going from last to first every time.
Yeah.
Because they come out, they suck a little bit, the fans get nuts and get behind them, and next thing you know, they are sitting in second place. And
absolutely.
You're like, oh, hey, look at that. Coming out of nowhere, there's the Timbers.
And I mean,
up at the top.
You know, if you look back at the history of the Dynamo, that's how the Dynamo were as well. You know, they would struggle in the middle of the season, and then as the fan support kind of still poured in, and and they had those home matches after the summer kind of ended, they had their best form of the season to close out the season so that they would make the playoffs year after year, and then they would go on a tear in the playoffs. I mean, the thing is that teams struggle in the season. There are very few teams, one or two during the regular season, that are going to be superb match in and match out. Even FCD have had their struggles. Even New York Red Bulls have had their struggles. Even, Toronto had plenty of struggles this season. But, it's important to remember that even in those struggles, we still need to support the team. I get that some fans are frustrated about the front office. I get that. But as has been said multiple times, the problem is when you remove your support from the team, you're not hurting just the front office. You're hurting all aspects of the team, and you're creating a black hole of suck that just perpetuates itself. And am I saying you have to stick it out through everything? Yeah, I really am, honestly. You're not supporting a single player. You're not supporting a single mentality. You're supporting a culture. And supporting a culture means that you don't back out when things are rough. It means that you bone up when things are rough. And I'm tired of these fans that are willing to turn tail and run when things are tough. You don't have to agree to the front office, but you know what? You're still supporting something worth supporting. I don't agree with everything the front office does. I mean, let's be honest, I don't. But I support because I support these players, because I support the people that are involved with this organization. I support Jay. I support my ticket rep. And there are plenty of other people that I support because they've earned that trust and they've earned that support. And at the end of the day, I just hope that fans are willing to take a step back, take a deep breath, and go, the future is bright and we need to embrace that future right now and give it a chance to work itself out. It's not going to be great every season, but when it is great, it is fantastic. U.S. Open Cup, perfect example. When it is great, it is fantastic.
I agree.
Well,
the payoff is amazing.
It is.
Comes, there's nothing like it.
Oh, I mean, it was. To steal a phrase from today's generation, it was lit, yo. With that being said, Edson just facepalmed.
Sean.
Oh, Edson just facepalmed. It was glorious. Anyways, hey Jay, we appreciate you coming on. So again, you want to give your email address out and your phone number out so people can call in for ticket stuff and things like that.
713-276-7529 is my direct office line. Again, that is 713-276-7529. The email is the letter J and my last name, which is Adelberg, ADELBERG, Jadalberg at HoustonDynamo.com. If you want to follow my ridiculous ranting and ravings on Twitter, it is my full name, Jay Adelberg, at J Adelberg. And, I think in the future, there should always be one wrestling question at the end of the segment. Just throwing that out there. One wrestling question.
Okay, I got a question for you then. What's your favorite finisher of all time?
Favorite finisher of all time?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, my goodness.
That's a tough one. I did not hold back. You said it, and I have questions ready for you, so don't think I don't.
Okay, so I'm an old school kind of guy. I grew up on 80s wrestling. But I have to say that Kenny Omega's One-Winged Angel is that, and maybe like Pentagon Jr.'s Package Pile Driver.
Mm-hmm.
Those two look awesome. You know what I mean? Like, that looks like, I know that they would kick out of it, either one of them in Pro Wrestling Guerrilla, but any other Fed, you're dead. That's it.
Oh,
you're done.
absolutely. You're just done. I think there are tons of great finishers out there. I think that those are both very, very good finishers. Well, that is it, Jay. I'm kicking you off now so we can go on to our next segment. But again, thank you very much for joining us this week. We will have you back on. It's just becoming a consistent thing. We're going to get you on again in a few weeks.
All right, thanks so much.
For sure. Thanks, Jay. Have a good one.
Thank you, Jay.
Good night, guys.
Good night.
Oh, that was fantastic. I need a break. So let's take a 5-minute break now. And then when we get back, we're going to talk something that I kind of hinted at earlier. And I'm going to tease it now. Anybody who follows Liga MX has to be going, what in the is going on with MLS? Matias Almeida has been announced as the head coach of San Jose. We'll talk about that here in a few minutes when we come back. And I'm so glad Edson is my co-host because this is totally perfectly set up for him to talk. We be back. And we are back. You're listening to Generation Orange, a Houston internet soccer show and podcast. We are your hosts, Sean Ringrose and
Edson Ochoa.
Before we went to break, we mentioned our topic of the next 10 minutes. 10 minutes. I think I set aside 10 minutes for this. Mm-hmm. Is new San Jose Quakes coach Matias Almeida.
Matias Almeida, el pelado.
Yeah, that dude. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So
why is he special?
Okay. So here's the thing about Matias Almeida. Matias Almeida came in as pretty much an unknown to Chivas de Guadalajara. And Chivas had come in for the last couple of seasons, last couple of years, struggling to bring in a coach that would prove to be successful with the limitations of playing with a roster that was 100% Mexican. And they brought in a lot of coaches, some with a lot of pedigree in Liga MX. We're not able to do it. A lot of it also had to do with how much pressure and how eccentric the owner Jorge Vergara is with
that dude
how
is
much
next level crazy.
With how much he wants to control even the on-field aspects of this team.
So so people know, he's basically the equivalent of Jerry Jones. I mean, he really is.
Yeah.
That's if there was an NFL owner, that's
Chivas pretty much is the Dallas Cowboys of Liga MX.
Isn't it fitting? I mean, isn't that kind of crazy that there is a team that matches almost to a T if you think about it?
Yeah, because this is a team that won almost everything in years before, and they still we have 12 championships. What in the age of the dinosaurs?
Yeah, exactly.
But okay,
what have you won in the last decade?
Well, that's where I'm heading at. That is where I'm heading at.
I know.
So Matias Almeida comes in. He's got that challenge that he's got all these young Mexicans from some from the academy, some from within Liga MX, and so he has got to build this team with chemistry. And he's one of those that instilled the fight, the passion of playing for Guadalajara, having him being an Argentinian. But he brought in a couple, just a little bit of that culture from, I believe, River Plate, where he's been with. I believe he played with River Plate when he was a player, and so what he won with this really limited team, he won Copa MX twice in 1 year. He beat Tigres. He beat Tigres in the final for Liga MX in 2016. He defeated Toronto, who defeated America, who defeated Tigres for the CONCACAF Champions League this past season. Now, he got into an argument with the owner, Jorge Vergara, and he was let go. And his players were had grown to love him as a coach, as a mentor, that a couple of them rebelled in favor of Matias Almeida. That's how much of an influence that coach had on these young players. And a couple of weeks ago, month or 2 months ago, Matias Almeida was on the radar to take the vacant Mexican national team job after Juan Carlos Osorio left. However, it was going to be extremely difficult because the owner, Jorge Vergara, holds a lot of interest in the Mexican national team. And even if he did get the job, he was going to make life difficult for him.
Of course.
There was also rumors that he might take the Tigres job if Tuca Ferretti accepted the national team job permanently. We know that did not happen. Tuca Ferretti, actually, Cemex was the owner of Tigres, said, no, we're not giving you Tuca Ferretti. He's going to stay.
Smart move.
Yeah. And so he was what's the word? Unemployed.
He was blackballed.
Yeah, but he was unemployed for a long time. There was actually rumors that he might take, I believe it was either Costa Rican team, and he was really close. But I think somebody leaked something that shouldn't have been said. I guess from his party or something around there, maybe his agent or something, and Costa Rica backed out. And so now, 2 days ago, it was yesterday it was confirmed.
Yeah.
It was confirmed that Matias Almeida would take on the job for the San Jose Earthquakes.
Yeah, it was teased on
Monday night. On Sunday night.
I was about to say Sunday night. Yeah, it was teased on Sunday night, and we were talking when I saw that come across my timeline. And I was like, oh, no, I wasn't really thinking about who it was. It was just like, oh, that's cool, Matias Almeida. And, I said that, and you went, what? Like, it caught you by surprise, which I was like, oh, that's fantastic.
I mean, it was unexpected for me because there was no hints.
Mexican media had no
idea.
Heads up. Yeah.
They were completely taken aback, completely taken by surprise when it was announced.
Bitches.
When it was announced that it was going to be the San Jose Earthquakes that had hired him, which it caught me by surprise that they got caught by surprise because usually they're out there, but it was well played by San Jose. Well played.
Not only that, but with what happened with his agent or whomever was party to the Costa Rica part of that caused the issues there, it may have been his prerogative to say, hey, we want to keep this thing under wraps because I've already had stuff screwed up. And so he may have told his people, he may have kept it from his people even at that point and said, look, I've got something. I can't tell you anything about what it is. Because, it literally felt like it just came out of nowhere.
Yeah.
But on the flip side of it, the question I have for you is what does him being named San Jose coach, what does that mean within Mexico from just Mexican fan standpoint? Does that assist in changing the perception of MLS?
I think if anything, because I have seen it in social media that a couple of Chivas fans that turned out to be bigger Almeida fans for what he did with this team than Chivas fans right now with Pepe Cardoso, they are willing to look at what Matias Almeida will do with San Jose Earthquakes. Granted, this is coming from fans who completely took any time to scorn anything having to do with MLS.
Yeah.
And so now they're going to have their eyeballs looking at what he does in San Jose, maybe, to see like, oh, why did you let him go? Look how well he's doing or things like that. As far as the media, I think it's going to be another one of those things, trying to see, was it a good decision to let him go or a bad decision?
They're looking for
kind
the
of thing.
story.
But but they are going to be looking at MLS, which is good.
That's
obviously,
a big deal. Yeah.
And obviously there are a couple others that will still bash MLS and saying that this is almost like. And these comments were thrown around like, oh, he just threw himself in the hammock. He knows he's going to get a bigger paycheck with less pressure than what he would get here with Liga MX.
Except he wasn't getting offers in Liga MX because freaking Vergara's an asshat. And it's true. And I I'm not a big Liga MX fan, and even I know that. Like, he was being blackballed. And at the end of the day, I can't blame the guy for wanting to go find an opportunity where he can succeed. And I'm not saying this guy's going to come here and he's going to run roughshod through this league. He's not. Newsflash, that's not how this works. Cisco makes a point. 13 to 23 MLS coaches are now foreigners. It wasn't that long ago that we were talking it was 3-4 coaches in MLS that were foreigners. So that's a big jump in the last couple of seasons in particular.
And take a look. And here's the thing. One of the biggest complaints we had before in that time where it was just 3 or 4 foreigners and it was all American coaches, what was the biggest complaint? Oh, well, American coaches aren't really...
It's all about the physicality. It's not about the technique. It's not about the technical prowess. It's not about... creativity. It's not about the flow. It's not a beautiful game.
And
it's
now
a
we
thumping
and we
game.
would call that, one of the primary reasons why MLS was at a subpar level.
Yeah.
And now let's take a look where MLS is now, bringing in this, bringing in Tata Martino.
These styles, yeah.
Bringing in Matias Almeida, from Liga MX, mind you.
Yeah.
I mean, the MLS, even though we talked about how many faults it still has, it has been improving. And I think even Mexican fans are now realizing, especially after yesterday, hey, MLS, when it might not be perfect, is making bigger bounds towards improving in the future.
Yeah, we talked about
than
that.
Liga MX.
Yeah.
Liga MX has pretty much been stalling.
Yeah, it's stagnated. Liga MX is stagnated. It's become, if you look at it, it's become the heavy hitting league. It's there are still fantastic players in the league, obviously, but the flip side of it is that the soccer being played, and I know it's going to rub some Liga MX fans the wrong way, and all the more power to you. But the style of play in Liga MX right now, it's ugly. I mean, it is just plain ugly. It's not the beautiful game in Liga MX anymore. And, if that's not going to change, and MLS is becoming that league that's about the beautiful game, about the creativity and the tactics and, those types of things, that it's just going to... I think you're going to see a bigger draw of those bigger names coming into MLS instead of going to Liga MX.
And here's another thing, continuing on what I was talking about
Attacking
right now.
talents. Let me rephrase it. Attacking talents coming into MLS. I don't think we see a lot of defensive talent coming into MLS. We'll talk about that here in a few minutes. But I think we do see the talent coming in the attack within MLS. That's some of the best talent that the world has to offer at a younger age. I don't think we're talking about Messi or Ronaldo or anything like that. But we're talking about players that, they're up-and-coming talents that can be the future.
And see, here's the thing. By bringing in these different coaches, foreigners, whatever, you bring in fresh blood, fresh idea, fresh blood.
Fresh tactics.
Yeah, exactly. And so that has helped out a lot in MLS. Liga MX, it's always the same. It's always the same coaches being rotated. Very few teams have dared to bring in somebody from the outside. Santos did it with...
They want a Mexican coach.
Yeah, Santos did it with... No, not necessarily Mexican. It's always Ricardo Lavolpe.
They cycle the same coaches.
Yeah, it's Manuel Lapuente, and he was still valid. But, Pedro Caixinha coming into Santos was like, it was a bomb.
Yeah.
And then bringing in Matias Almeida with Chivas, that was really risky. And these two coaches with these new ideas paid off.
Yeah.
And Pedro Caixinha went to Rangers.
Yeah.
And then came back with Cruz Azul. And Cruz Azul right now is in first place.
Yeah, they're the best team in the league right now.
Yeah.
I know that hurts to say, but it's true. And they are.
So, so this is, I think, where MLS is farther ahead in Liga MX, and I think in the long run, it's going to pay a lot of dividends. We might see, I don't know, they make fun saying, 20 years ago you said that by now MLS would be better than Liga MX, and that's not happening.
Nobody said that.
And
sure, y'all believe that.
And so, but I think I might say less than 10 years, we might see MLS being better than Liga MX.
I think in the next 10 years we see our first MLS team hoist CCL.
That's a really valid point.
I think that's going to be the next thing that we see. I think that's the next step for MLS, and I think they're at that point, bringing in these specific coaches, and Atlanta being as legit as they are.
Well, we still have to see how they do it the next season.
It hurts me to say that, but they are. I think the next step for MLS, though, is also that they have to expand roster size and expand the salary budget to fit that roster size. I think right now there's a significant limitation because of the roster size to field a competitive team in international tournaments. It makes it very difficult because like we said, at the opening of the show, in Liga MX, you have 2 starting 11s for most teams. In MLS, you're lucky to have not just your starting 11, but maybe 2 or 3 depth players that are good enough to play in your starting 11. Even TFC, for as many good players as they have, they're not in MLS Cup contention. They're out of the playoffs. By the way, we lasted longer than Toronto FC this season in the playoff race. I just want that to be clear.
I mentioned that on Sunday.
And also, so it's clear, we did that in the West Conference. That's tougher than the Eastern Conference. Also, so we're clear. I just want to make sure that people listening understand that. That's important to remember as well.
Here's my doubt, and I want you to answer this question because I made this comment on Sunday, and that is, even when we won 2006 and 2007, we won the two MLS Cups. Bringing in big name players was still not part of the Dynamo DNA, correct?
They were trying to. They brought in Luis Angel Landin. That was part of that process.
Really?
They hoped he would be a big player. The problem with MLS, and you have to, and this is different than Liga MX. There wasn't up until very recently. There haven't been any scouting, full-time scouts or scouting networks or anything like that. You don't have international scouts that are hired by MLS clubs because they don't have the budgets to do that. And so, they see a player like Luis Angel Landin, they do their due diligence as much as possible, calling around to various coaches. The problem with that is those coaches are going, oh, hell yeah, you want to get this guy, because they want the guy off their damn roster. And so I think MLS learned from that, and I think you're starting to see more of these teams. I mean, look at the players that were brought in this season and last season in particular across MLS. You have your few, top name talents that were already known as top name talents, but you've got a lot of talents that weren't necessarily top name talents. You've got Ruby Diaz, you've got Gutierrez, you've got Elison Kyoto, you've got Tomas, you've got Cabezas, you've got, help me out here with other names that I'm not thinking of. Godoy is another good example. He was not a well-known name at that point.
No, but the point I was trying to make is because the comment in that show was like, oh, why doesn't the Dynamo bring in DPs?
Yeah.
And it's like, and I told them because we don't need it. And I told them, oh, Toronto, even with Jovinko, even with these big name players.
Well, it's not that we don't need it. It's that we bring in different DPs, right? It's not that we don't use our DP slots. We're using our DP slots. We're just using them more efficiently.
No, but they were specifically asking for a David Villa, for a Zlatan Ibrahimovic. It's like, we don't need that. What our DNA right now is bringing up and coming young players that have proven themselves in the youth system that are going to be rising.
Oh, yeah. Alphonso Davies is another one.
And I think that was the point I was trying to make in that show. And I think hopefully they understood.
Joseph Martinez, Barco, Almiron. Sorry, I just reminded myself of Atlanta, and I was like, why did I blink out on Atlanta? But my point that I'm trying to make with that, and I think it applies to the Dynamo, is that across the league, teams are beginning to realize that bringing in those one or two aging, retiring players, that at some point, Diego Valeri is another good example as well. He wasn't a name player when he got here, but guess what? He's a damn for sure name player now. And Lodero, another good example. I mean, he was a name player, quote unquote. People expected big things from him because it was MLS, but he wasn't the best player, out there. And what I'm getting at though is these are younger players that are being brought in as DPs because teams understand that they've got to bring in younger players and younger talent to keep them around longer. I think we see, now that we've got that crop of young talent in MLS, I think we see in the next 5 years, we start to see some skyrocketing transfer fees going out, which means that we're going to see the way that MLS is going to change the way they handle transfer fees, the way that they handle outgoing players, and I think ultimately it ends up with MLS changing the way they handle contract structures in general, which is eventually they're going to get away from being single entity. Because they still are single entity. With all the greatness that is there right now, they're still single entity. The moment they get away from single entity, this league is going to boom because there's so much potential in the way that teams are approaching this. And so I have to applaud MLS for that. Shut up, Cisco. Alexander Lopez is not a star player on any team. He's a good Honduran, but, that's a Honduran. He still wasn't better than Elise or Kyoto. So, all right, we're going to go to a quick break. We got 2 minutes. Harry should be calling us, Harry Austin from San Antonio. Harry Austin in San Antonio. I still can't get over that a guy with the last name Austin lives in San Antonio. Talk about living in the triangle. I guess that's the epitome of it, right? It'd be like a guy named San Antonio living in Austin. Same type of thing. But he's going to come on and talk. We're going to do some RGV Express, and he's going to come on and talk about with you, talk about the RGV San Antonio match coming up this weekend that I know you are just so amped and geeked for. How does, speaking of, just real quick, is San Antonio in the playoffs?
They're fighting.
Oh, so this really could be what we set up at the early part of this season to possibly be.
Yes.
Are you not excited about that opportunity and that possibility? Does that not just get you all giddy inside?
Yes.
All right. Well, we will talk about that when we get back. Harry, if you're listening, you're good to call in. 956-622-5977. That's just for Harry. The rest of you, if you call in, we will hang up on you because we need to keep it open for Harry at this point. So anyways, we'll be back in just like 1 minute.
Do you need me the way I miss you? 'Cause I can barely. You're the one I can't deny. I wanna take you sky. Take you sky. Review, you have in review me. Stuck in the review, you have in review me. Do you need me the way I miss you? 'Cause I can barely. You're the one I can't deny. I wanna take you sky. Take you sky. Review, you have in review me. Stuck in the review, you have in review me.
All right, guys, we are back for the final 30 minutes of today's Generation Orange show. Welcome to RGV Express.
As everybody tunes out.
Wow.
I'm just saying.
What's going on, Samuel? Welcome to thank you for thank you for subscribing
Hey,
to
Sam.
Down in the Valley.
Hey, Sam. See, I told you I'd wear it, just so you know. I'm wearing it, just so you know.
So we actually have a really good friend of ours of the show, whether it's Down in the Valley as well as Generation Orange. He is the #1 San Antonio UFC fan. He is Harry Austin. Harry, how you doing, man?
The number one? Is that what you said? The number
I'm
one?
not sure I can be number one because I'll just give it up to the Czechs because they travel quite a bit. And then there's another gentleman, Jeremiah, and I forget what his Twitter thing is, but he made the Northwest trip for San Antonio. So if it's local or maybe once or twice, I'll go. But but I appreciate it. How are you guys this evening?
Oh, good. How are you?
Good, crazy. Just got off work and raced home and raced home safely, we'll say.
Good. That's good. I'm glad
That's good.
glad
That's
you
good.
arrived safely. That's always important. Are you able to watch the stream? Are you able to see what's going on right now? This is important. That's why I'm asking.
I am pulling it up as we speak, yes.
Awesome. So I just wanted you to see that I am wearing your scarf. I am supporting San Antonio FC. But I have to do something. So let me know as soon as you can see this. It's important.
Okay.
This is actually, I do have to give you credit. San Antonio's got some nice material for their scarf. I don't know if you got a chance to feel that, but that is really nice. I mean, that's a very comfortable material. Surprisingly, I expected it to be.
It's not as much of a heart knit as other scarves.
Well, it's crazy, right? Because like the RGV scarves, they've got that like.
It's all polyester.
Yeah,
because it's a summer scarf.
But do they?
Yeah, that's fair.
Does RGV have a winter one? Because the only one that I've seen is the summer one. Do they have a winter one?
That's because it's always 120 degrees down there, so
There we go. So,
Yep,
yes, I am on. I see you guys now.
Okay.
You've probably heard that. beat.
So Harry, I just got to do something for you. So this is the San Antonio scarf. There's the RGV scarf, and here's what happens with that San Antonio scarf. See ya. This is an RGV podcast, buddy. Get out. No, I'm just kidding. Anyways, I thought you'd appreciate that. A little rivalry fun for you.
Yes.
So this is your segment. I don't even know I was trying to take over. I just had to do that because I thought it was fun.
No, definitely.
Hey, Edson's going to be wearing a San Antonio shirt after this weekend, so
That's not going to happen.
Oh no, it's going to happen, Edson. We pay up when we bet things.
No, what I mean that RGB is going to win, and he's going to be wearing the RGB.
Oh, you guys have a bet for this match?
Yes.
Oh, so when RGV knocks San Antonio out of the playoffs and Harry's crying because San Antonio got knocked out by RGV, he then has to wear an RGV kit
at his show.
Oh, that's beautiful.
Not only wear, but I have to buy it. So
see, he's bought in. He says he's got to buy it and wear it. He just said, I have to do that. So I'm just clarifying here, Harry. You basically just said RGV's going to win. You just said that. I mean...
no, it's I think it's 50-50. If honest,
wow.
I think it's a 50-50 flip of a coin.
All right.
RGV, and Edson was on our podcast last night, and RGV's record is, they're not playing what their record is, in my opinion.
Oh yeah.
So my first question to you, Harry, how have you seen so far, like say the past 5 games? What have you seen from San Antonio?
Well, the first, they won 2 in a row. Before that, they lost 3 that were on the road, so including one to Tulsa. So we'll talk more recent. They're a different team at home, and I think it's similar to RGV, away versus home. It seems like they're different teams that show up. So. But when they went up to, the first 3 prior to this was, at Swope, which they lost, or the first one was at Tulsa, which they lost 2-1. They lost at Swope 2-0, and they lost at St. Louis, which was the one where they really lost control of their destiny 2-0. So, on that portion, things were looking pretty down. It's, hey, the season's going to be over just because you didn't see it. You didn't see the, consistency. The defense, which is Coach Powell's strong point, has been the weakness of the team this year. But at home, like I said here, even though they gave up an early goal to the Lights, and they were able to rattle the young Seattle goaltender, at Toyota Field. They're just a different team, and that's why I'm so happy that this game's at Toyota Field as opposed to down at HEB Park. Because I think it'd be even harder down there. And we saw that in 2016, how well you treated us, when we came down here on a last game session where we needed to win. You guys were not very kind hosts, we'll just say.
It tends to be the case when you go to RGV. No, I'm just kidding. RGV is great. So what happens if there's a draw?
Nothing.
Does San Antonio still make playoffs with a draw?
Oh, yeah, that's...
No. We can win out and not make the playoffs. We do not control our destiny.
Oh.
So basically, if I recall correctly, it's all in the hands of St. Louis FC.
No, that's not true. And this is where I think USL needs to do a little bit different scheduling. So San Antonio has 2 ways in. To me, the easiest way is if Swope ties Las Dos or loses to Las Dos. If they get 3 points, they're in. So as long as they get 1 point or less, they're in. St. Louis has to get 4 points out of their final 2 matches. Both are at home. One's against Tulsa Wednesday, which is a makeup of a cancellation game from earlier in the year. And then they get Oklahoma City, the Energy, there as well. So on Saturday. So
even
not an easy road in my choice, but
go ahead.
But the Swope one, the reason why I say the schedule, they play Sunday afternoon, so they're going to know exactly what they need. So if they need the win, you kind of wonder how many Sporting Swope players will come down to make sure that they get the 3 points.
Makes sense. So the other question is, if San Antonio loses this match on Saturday, does that officially knock them out? I mean, the loss officially knocks them out. They have no chance.
Loss or tie.
Oh, I can see a draw happening.
Well, I guess it would depend. St. Louis would have to lose both games, which I don't see them losing both games.
Okay, that's fair. That's a lot of permutations to what remains in the USL season in the Western Conference. Is that what they call this?
Yes, it's the Western Conference.
Western Conference. So who on RGV in particular, Harry, scares you the most? I think I already know the answer, but I got to ask that question.
Yeah, we talked about it last night, the captain. And to me, I like Smalls. The Smalls, and me and Edson kind of talked about how Lance Lang's made a huge difference with us. Smalls, to me, has made a huge difference with them.
I think that's fair. So, Edson, who from San Antonio FC scares you the most?
I said Chano Guzman.
And I'm expecting an answer.
Okay, so Ever Guzman, he is he's an attacker. He's a striker that they got from Liga MX. I believe he played in Morelia. He played in other Liga MX teams. Came to San Antonio FC and really made an impact. With San Antonio's attack. He actually scored a beautiful golazo last time San Antonio went to HEB Park and we lost 3-1. He scored I think it was about 25 yards out chip over Nico Cordy. And I mean, it was just beautiful, and it was in the first touch as well. And I think he's the player that I'd be most scared of because of how clinical he can be in front of goal.
So let me ask another question. What I want to do is I'm going to ask you both questions, and I'm expecting answers, just so we clarify how this is going to work.
And I do have one question to ask you guys when you're done.
Oh,
and
you can.
It's kind of Houston. It's Houston Dynamo related as well, actually.
Go ahead and ask your question now, and then we'll continue with our asking each other questions.
So Houston plays Los Angeles on Friday night, right?
Yes, LAFC.
They play.
No, Galaxy.
No, LAFC.
LAFC. Okay, that's what I thought.
So it's LAFC, and then I believe because we received Seattle Sounders, and then after Sounders we go to LA Galaxy. I think.
Yeah.
Right, but you guys don't play on Saturday or Sunday or along those lines. So here's my question, and it's also, I believe, an international break, right? So
correct.
I think I saw that you guys were missing
Elise and Kyoto.
Some play, some forwards here.
See.
So my question is, and this is, do you anticipate with them playing Friday night that there's going to be some Houston RGV players that kind of fringe MLS that come down to RGV for the game against San Antonio? Or because you're losing some players for international duty, do you anticipate losing any RGV players going up to Houston for this match?
I don't anticipate any RGV players being called up because, I mean, the only one would be Connor Donovan. Because they have to already be signed to MLS contracts or have not entered into an MLS contract this season. And some of those players were called up for Open Cup on short-term MLS contracts, so they really can't call most of them up. The only one they could do was Carlos Small. And I'm going to be honest with you, Houston wants to see San Antonio lose as much as RGV does.
That's what I was thinking.
Yeah. So I would be surprised if they called anybody up for this match, and I've got it on pretty good authority they don't plan to. So they're telling RGV, look, you guys have enough good players, you can do this on your own. And I fully believe that's the case. I don't think they're going to send any players down either. I think
Not even Luis Gil?
not even Luis Gil. No, I don't see it happening. I just don't. Especially with the injury to Pena. If there's any chance that may be lingering going into the following week, I don't think they send any players down. They could send like a Tyler Derrick down again, just to get minutes. Oh, I'd love to see Tyler Derrick start that match, wouldn't you?
Oh, man.
But he didn't last time. That's the goalie, right? Because he got called up last time on game day.
Correct.
Yes, against Sneer.
So.
Yeah, but Seitz actually has been the backup the last couple of matches, so don't discount Tyler Derrick's possibility of being down there. It's just going to let Tyler Derrick, please.
Like you, I think Houston, and it kind of goes with, because I'm, between the two MLS teams in Texas, I go more Houston. My son, though, is more FC Dallas because he's like, that relationship between RGV and Houston. He's like, I just can't do it. And I'm like, no, you can. So, but yeah, I do think that that the goaltender is going to be a huge part of that.
Absolutely, no, I do as well. So my turn to ask a question. So there's a tradition, Harry, as you are well aware, that we have on this show when it comes to matches that are upcoming. We do two things. We do realistic prediction. What do you expect the result to be? And then we do bold predictions. We actually haven't done this in a while. We do it like in person before the matches, but we're going to do it this time way before the match so that we have it on record. So what is your realistic prediction for this match? And then what is your bold prediction? That can be something like San Antonio wins 5-0, or that can be a certain player goes and does something crazy. Somebody scores a bicycle kick. I mean, it could be anything really crazy and just something that you're like, oh man, it would be crazy if that happens, but still has some kind of minuscule probability of happening. So I'm going to throw that to you, Harry, and then Edson's going to answer that.
I think it's going to be just like what happened in RGV. It's going to be 3-1 San Antonio. I think it's going to be close. It wouldn't shock me if I think San Antonio will score first. I think Smalls will tie it up. And San Antonio will get, a goal either early, either close to, at half or right after half, and they'll get a late goal with, RGV pushing up like Chino's goal was, last year. The bold, I think we'll see Charlie Ward and he'll get a brace.
Oh man, that's a sore subject around these parts. Edson, what's your realistic and your bold? Oh man. Oh, Edson's over here crying. Oh man.
You know what would be worse? Like if he comes and celebrates in the section where I'm at. Okay, so my realistic prediction, I said it last night with the guys at the San Antonio Roundtable. 2-1 RGV scored in the last minute.
Okay.
And my bold prediction would be 4-0. One of the goals being scored by Brandon Morales.
Oh damn! Oh, RGV product. That would be something. All right, I'm gonna give prediction. I'm gonna predict a 2-2 draw. Yeah, that's right. I'm riding the line, baby. I'm riding the line, baby. And I'm predicting that 2 of those goals, one for each team, comes from an own goal.
That's your bold?
That's my bold. 1 own goal for each team. I mean, it's kind of bold. We've seen it happen with RGV, Connor Donovan. But we don't see.
San Antonio's done it as well.
So see, it's bold, but it's realistic. It's very rare to have 2 own goals in a match, and let alone for it to be 2 different teams.
Right.
So that's why I consider that a bold prediction.
No, it is. Any red cards?
Ooh, yes. And you ready for why I actually see this match going 2-2 instead of in San Antonio's favor? I predict a red card for Charlie Ward. I think he gets a little bit hot-headed about a particular challenge in this match.
He did get. I
think Escalante. If Escalante plays, he's the one that would get a red card. Charlie seems pretty level-headed to me. You guys obviously know him a lot better than I do, but he seems like a pretty
Well, Charlie Ward with RGV was always level-headed. When he did preseason with the Dynamo at the Mobile Mini Sun Cup, he did receive a red card with the Dynamo. But I know Escalante also has history of getting a red card in South Texas derbies.
And, a red card doesn't have to necessarily be a hot-headed response to something. It could also be a handball in the box that's intentional, quote-unquote. It could be a dog-so. It could just be a really bad call by the ref. I mean, let's be honest, we see those all the time. So, yeah, Callow, you had more than two.
The other one that I could see would be Mikey Lopez. He's from my understanding, he's from down in the RGV Valley.
Yeah, he's from Mission.
And I know he gets a little feisty, we'll just say. I've seen that a couple of times with, in the two RGV matches. So he would be the other one that I could see from San Antonio. But you bring up, a great point with, I forget the name of the young player that you guys just signed from the academy there.
Yeah, Brandon Morales.
But I think it would be awesome to have him play as long as we have Ethan Bryant, who's just turned 17. Mm-hmm. He was too old for the San Antonio Academy, but they have the players that are kind of aged up that they have that's part of the academy, but not really part of the academy teams. But he was signed to an academy contract this year, so I think that would be kind of awesome. For the future of both teams to be able to in a high pressure match like this, that where both of the kids get really good minutes, and it'll be seeing. And Bryant, he had 2 assists last week against the Light.
So my other question to you right now is, what's the atmosphere like for this week? What's the expectancy from the San Antonio fans? Like, are the people like consistently talking about it? Are they hyped up for this match?
It's kind of a mixed bag. San Antonio attendance-wise isn't doing as well as last year, but the fans that are showing up are very in tune, and just like the crowd at HEB, the fans that show up they make the atmosphere good. I'm kind of interested to see how it'll be, because it's it's the last game of the year, and there's no guarantee. And San Antonio, it's Fan Appreciation Week, so they're doing all sorts of specials. I think dollar bill night as well. So as far as from a marketing standpoint, San Antonio is trying to get everybody out there that they can. And we both know that the RGV matches, are special. As far as between the two teams, whether it's down in HEB Park or Toyota Field. I'm just hoping that with it being a Saturday match, that we'll see good showing from the RGV fan support, with the Stampede and stuff like that.
Yeah, I mean, from what I heard, I think a couple of Stampede members were going to make the trip. They just weren't sure if they would be allowed to bring in, flags or instruments or anything like that. I think last time that they did make the trip, Toyota Field kind of got on, all of a sudden announced, because they had originally reached an agreement where they would be able to bring him in. Then all of a sudden, I think the employee that made that told that to Mark, who was our liaison at RGV, I believe he moved to Phoenix Rising, something around those lines. And his replacement had no idea of that, so they kind of did a whole 180 on it. So might want to ask around to see how that is, if they'll be able to or not. But I think my final question to you, and this is looking more into the future of San Antonio for 2019, is making playoffs or not, what do you expect of this team looking at 2019?
I think there's going to be some changes. What those changes are, I'm not sure. If they don't make the playoffs, I think Coach Powell gets brought. I don't think he's gone, but I think it raises it warms up his seat. Where it raises that possibility. but he's done so much, and he's got, the top licenses, and Spurs, SSNE typically doesn't have quick trigger. And as long as they can kind of see progress, but I think going in, and I think everybody, expectation wise, thought San Antonio would be in the playoffs, not fighting to get into the playoffs. So it's been a disappointing year, but I think filling the role of Sebastian Igbaga, has been a bigger request than anybody thought from that. And, obviously he's MLS talent, and he's showing that with NYCFC. Like I said here, I know, with this being kind of, RGV, I kind of wonder, with the 3 RGV players that we have, who comes back. I'm not sure Escalante comes back. I don't think he's lived up to what we thought that he would do. I think Charlie Ward, I think, would be welcomed back, but in my opinion, he hasn't gotten the minutes that he hoped for. I would expect, because I think he'll be looking for a starting position, and right now he's coming off the bench, and Kyle Murphy, like I said here, he's kind of that same, where he's more of a rotation player. So for me, that's going to be, with, USL indie teams, there's typically a lot of turnover, because they're just a year-to-year contract. And, I'm sure, Houston will be helping us out. And we did get a loan, Hernandez from, the team up north that we don't talk about on here. So it'll be interesting to see what changes takes place. And I think it's a huge difference on if they make the playoffs or if they don't, because, if you make the playoffs, then that's a whole different season. And, San Antonio has the talent to go far, but, like I said here, when you're losing to Tulsa and Seattle too, that consistency kind of makes you wonder. And I think you got the feeling last night where, you said one of the things that you liked was, the consistency of San Antonio. And I know you guys mentioned it, before on Down in the Valley, but, on our side here, we're like, okay, hey, the consistency's, as far as been there, but the results haven't always matched the expectations.
So this is 100% my final question before I let you go. And you asked me this question last night, or you guys at San Antonio Roundtable, having to do with the inclusion of the New Mexico United, El Paso Locomotive, Austin Bold, and I want to hear your opinions on how this is going to affect this rivalry between RGV and San Antonio, more because of how closer these, especially El Paso and Austin, are to you guys in San Antonio compared to us at Rio Grande Valley.
Well, you're closer. El Paso's 8 hours away. And if they go 3 conferences, I don't know if we're going to be in the same conference. So El Paso and New Mexico, I don't see them filling the spot. Now, Austin, I'm not going to lie to you, Austin will be number 1 because they go back, back to the Aztecs days. They're 90 miles away. The MLS crop, with, MLS Austin, I don't want to say they killed San Antonio FC, because I think San Antonio FC didn't play the cards right on the MLS expansion for there. And so I think Austin will be the primary, will be the primary rivalry, or 1A, and I still think RGV will be 1B. I think what hurts RGV is that it's you guys, a lot of the fans, consider you guys, a 2 team as opposed to, more of the indie type, if that makes sense. So, for some fans, not me, because, like I said here, you guys put out quality teams, and, I love going down to HEB Park, taking the family down there. You guys have always treated us, well, and, it's a fun game day experience. Even, giving a little bit grief back and forth with the Stampede and stuff like that.
Yeah, definitely. Well, Harry, I really appreciate for you to taking the time off your busy schedule to come on Generation Orange to talk about the South Texas Derby, talk about San Antonio to the fans here in Houston that are still learning little by little more about how Rio Grande Valley works and what is going on here.
No, you're good. This is so I am technically a Lansing United supporter. Land United, and so I just wanted to sport the scarf to support them because I knew somebody who was one of their supporters. So I figured with the rivalry ongoing and the USL talk and the freaking cast, USL talk in the last 15 minutes. Shut up! I figured that I would sport another USL club and be Switzerland of the bunch. So I went the neutral look on that.
And I know you guys maybe happen to go to break here, but here's a quick question for you. I guess you guys had a Houston Dynamo press conference where somebody inquired about RGV going down to League One.
Correct.
How close do you think that really was? And I know they talked about the competition wise, and I think they are right. The USL Premier is if you're looking at it from a competition wise, is the place to be. But I think from the cost side here, and this is where I think it will be interesting because FC Dallas is going to be putting a team in the Division 3, and that's where I kind of thought maybe RGV would drop down because of the lower expenses and you'd still be competitive with their, and I think it's going to kind of depend on how big the drop is.
Yeah.
But how close was that? Was that actually happening?
I think from what I heard is that the talks were there, but it wasn't really more of like this is a done deal, and then at the end they kind of backed out. I think it was more along the lines that, from what I heard from RGV front office is that their main focus was wanting to keep the Toros in D2, now the USL Championship. And I think Houston Dynamo, were analyzing the situation, and they realized, it was going to be bigger in the long term with their vision for the pipeline for RGV, that it was going to be a better fit to keep them in the championship compared to lowering down to USL League One. I don't know if Sean heard anything about that aspect or not.
USL League One was actually never on the table. If anything, it would have been USL League Two. But
USL League Two is the PDL.
I'm sorry, League One.
Yeah,
I thought it was 2 and then 1. Okay, whatever. It's 1 and then 2.
No,
why are they doing that so backwards?
Yeah,
God, that's so confusing.
Champion.
Championship is all that matters. At the end of the day, the conversations were there, but it came down to the level of play really winning out for the Dynamo side of things, and then the level of competition and the level of draw for RGV staying in the championship. That's what it came down to. And so for both sides, they looked at it and they said at the end of the day, it was a no-brainer. We're not going down. Excuse me. Does that mean that they can't possibly look at Dynamo having a team in one of the lower leagues? That's not going to prevent it from happening. I don't think the Dynamo are in a position right now to be able to do that, but I could see that happening in the next 10 years, for sure. I mean, they've got one, Brazos Valley
in League Two.
Yeah, in the PDL league.
So the conversion is this. So USL D2 is now USL Championship, and then what was going to be USL D3 is now USL League One. And then what was USL PDL, the Premier Development League, is now the USL D2, League Two. League
Two, yeah. So it's supposed to be structured similarly to the EFL structure, and I think it's pretty close to that. Harry's actually typing, incredible Harry, while he's on the phone with us. No, that's pretty cool.
Yeah. Penn FC as well. They are taking a hiatus for 2019, and they are coming back in 2020 supposedly, but in League
One.
League One, yes.
Yeah, in PDL.
League One, yeah.
In Brazos Valley, don't
But
forget
they
Brazos
may not
Valley.
be in Harrisburg either, I saw as well. So they're
Yeah.
looking for a soccer-specific stadium and looking for a more attractive spot. And,
Yep.
and to me, I thought this year would be the change where teams drop, but I actually think next year you'll see more teams drop. And like I said, I know I've always kind of questioned about Tulsa.
Yeah.
I think with USL championship or current USL, you can see the cost of going into it and keeping up with it's going to continue to rise. And the teams that got in when USL was D3, that may not have the deep pocketbooks for it. And that's the reason why I kind of wondered about what the Dynamo is. And they kind of, said, hey, and I know Sean's been harping on this, is that even though salary-wise it may not be high, but they are putting money, into, the development and into
absolutely.
International players that are lower. So,
yeah, no, I mean, and you see it in like a Carlos Small from the Dynamo aspect.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, they brought him in for a very specific reason and for a very specific purpose. And I think at the end of the day, you're going to continue to see them putting money into the championship side in order to help grow the talent pool available for depth players in the Premier League / MLS side.
But I think that's been Edson's frustration is that I don't want to put words in Edson's mouth, but just from listening to Down in the Valley is they hadn't seen prior to Smalls that. And I don't want to say commitment, but where they were bringing in a couple of players that maybe weren't 100% destined for for the Dynamo, but kind of on that fringe. Where hey, if they do step up and perform and develop, it could turn into something. But if not, it's still a solid piece to help build that. Build that. To me, building that foundation. Whether it's the academies down below or from RGV and and I think we could see a point 10, 15 years from now where the MLS teams do have teams in the different tiers. Unless they open up the pyramid.
I mean, if you look at the Premier League, you have like Tottenham, obviously in the Premier League, but their under 23 team, or under 17, under 21 team is in the championship. Essentially, they play championship teams, not. I take that back. They don't play championship teams. They don't play in the championship, but they play other under 21 teams. So they kind of have their own separate league, which is considered a step below championship. But they're scattered, and they've got other academy teams as well that do the same thing, and there's multiple layers to that onion to peel back. And I think, but if you look at overall. Cisco asked the question, what kinds of changes does this play into the USOC? I mean, we can't say that at this point. We have no idea because they haven't announced anything yet related to that. But I think we see Go ahead, Harry.
I don't think it'll have any changes because they're still going to be independent. From my understanding, they may come in around earlier, don't get me wrong, but I don't think as far as eligibility or anything along those lines that's going to affect anything. Unless they give technical control to
exactly. I think
team above them.
I think the question was more based around the D3 quote unquote League 2 teams that are being added by MLS clubs. How does that affect USOC? And I think the answer is it's the same thing that happened between RGV and the Dynamo, and that club does not get the opportunity to play in the US Open Cup. It's just that simple. But I think what we see is. Yeah, I think what we see is we continue to see that feeding chain, that pipeline, continue to grow across the board. And I think you mentioned that the Dynamo really haven't put the money behind RGV yet, other than Carlos Small now. But Edson and I talked about that in the off season. We talked about it repeatedly since then, and even after Carlos Small was brought in, and he was like, "Okay, maybe I can breathe a little easier now." And the answer and the reason why. Is because they had to shore up their own depth before they could really start scouting and really pour into building up the depth at RGV. And I think now that the Dynamo feel like they have at least their starting 11 kind of dealt with, They can afford to spend some more time with the RGV side of things to find some of those younger players to bring up through the ranks. But I also think they're going to bring in more Dynamo players too. I know that, but I do think they're going to bring in. I've said to Edson a couple times. I'm pretty certain they're going to bring in at least one or two more RGV players this offseason that are going to be very Carlos Small-esque, and that very talented players, very good players that are going to be high quality USL championship level players, but maybe aren't quite ready for Premier League MLS play per se. But I think we continue to see that trend. I think that's how a lot of MLS teams are going to try to operate too. And so we'll see how it works out. But I think in the short term, for all the struggles of this season, I think we've seen significant strides forward. And I think as the off season moves forward, we'll continue to see those strides continue to move forward as well. To answer your question.
I told Edson the last time we spoke, the last time I was on Down the Valley, that I think RGV next year will be a playoff team because assuming that they don't lose a lot of the depth. So
yeah,
which hopefully San Antonio will still also be a playoff team. But
I don't know if you noticed
as long as both of us are beating Austin, that's all I care about.
I don't know if you noticed how dejected Harry sounded when he said that. Like it was like they're going to be a playoff team. Oh man, and like you sounded so dejected about that, Harry. No, I'm kidding. I know that.
Well, I am.
But I also
you can see the talent, and as long as Houston doesn't pull it, which I think you guys have both said on both Gen Orange and Down in the Valley that the depth's there, and this year they don't anticipate it moving up. Just with the talent that the Dynamo have. They're you can't be losing just as many. I think it's 1-goal games that they have.
Yeah.
Next year that's going to turn around. It's just the odds. The odds say that.
Yep, absolutely, 100% agree. And I hope that there are some RGV fans listening because I don't know if Edson wants to admit this, but I've been saying that all season long in relation to RGV that for all the struggles RGV has had this year, they look incredibly good next year. And did you just kiss your scarf? Was that what I heard? Edson just kissed his scarf. It's exciting times for RGV fans. And, realistically, I think it's exciting times for San Antonio fans as well. This may be the last time we actually see them in the playoff hunt for the next 5 years. Sorry, I had to take a dig.
That's not going to happen.
I had to take a dig at you.
That.
I had to take a dig at you. Well, you're right, because they'll technically still be in the playoff hunt until RGV knocks them out year after year after year. But no, I'm just kidding. I love feeding into rivalry. I think it's fun. All right, Cisco, you get final question of the night, and then we're going to let Harry go because I'm sure he's got things he wants to go do, like, I don't know, live life and probably go to sleep or eat dinner or one of the two.
I don't really have any questions. Like I said, I always enjoy the show that you do, and especially with you, Sean. Just the knowledge that you have on MLS. That I've asked you some questions, and you've been able to respond back with the impartial stuff. And like I said, you're as far as for soccer knowledge, like I said, you're really kind of a great asset to be able to lean on. And me and Edson, like I said, here we go back and forth, but I think the, and we kind of had this discussion last night, San Antonio FC and RGV, and I'm going to include Austin in this as well, face a lot of the same battles when it comes to getting fans into the stadiums.
Yep.
And I think it's great that, at least, RGV and San Antonio, they can have those open communications to try to build on that, both on the field and off the field. And, hopefully when Austin comes into play as far as on the USL side, we can also add that in because I think, for all of Texas soccer, I think it's going to be extremely important, for us to show, all organizations that we have that lasting power because we know lower level soccer historically has not had great success. And if we can all three teams and, I'll even throw the Dynamo and FC Dallas, if we can start showing, hey, there are actual, soccer fans in Texas. That I think it's a win-win for for all of the teams in Texas.
Agreed, and I think the more that the rivalry gets fostered, I think we start to see that passion, I think, grow and be instilled in new ways. I think there's a Texas culture when it comes to soccer that still has to be fostered over the long term, and I think we're beginning to see some of that shape up and kind of work itself out. But I think there's a long way to go to prove that Texas in general can be a rabid soccer fan base, and I think there are plenty of opportunities, but it's something that just continues to be need to be worked on. So, Harry, we're going to go ahead and let you go, so you can go ahead and go on about your evening. Thank you for coming on, Harry. We do appreciate it, and good luck on Saturday and not getting your ass kicked.
Well, I won't, and like I said here, definitely, we took, trips to Oklahoma, trips to Phoenix, but not the trip to Houston as of yet. But if we come over in the off season, I'll try to see if we can hook up and maybe have a drink or dinner or whatever.
Oh, for sure, definitely. I owe you a beer. All right. Well, thanks again, Harry. Have a good one, sir.
Talk to you later. See you.
Yep. Bye.
Bye, guys.
So before we go, Cisco asked a question, and I wanted to make sure we addressed it. I didn't really feel like that was a question necessarily that Harry needed to be involved with. But the question for those that are just listening and not watching was, is there a timeline that is set on players where management, i.e. the Dynamo, they want to see certain players reach XYZ level or do XYZ things, or from a talent level be this good with RGV before they bring them up, or on the flip side of that, before they decide that maybe it's time to let them move on. I think the answer to that question, actually no, I know the answer to that question is yes. There is a timeline that they set on players. It's obviously each individual player that they have one, but they have timelines for players. And I believe sincerely that some of the current players that have left RGV and not continued with the Dynamo, even though they were offered Dynamo contracts because they felt that they deserved more. But the Dynamo also understand that those players are not at that moment MLS ready and still needed some more seasoning before they would be.
And as well, you also had players that were released, for that specific reason.
Yeah.
We talked about it.
There were three of them.
Two.
John
Montaño.
Two of them that were released for that reason. One of them that wasn't released for that reason.
Yeah, John Montaño, Zach Wright, and Guillermo Delgado.
Yeah.
And it was like 3/4 of the season in, and decided to pretty much end the contract right then and there. Why? Because they did not fulfill the expectations for this certain amount of timeline.
Absolutely.
and which is bad because it makes you look bad because you couldn't even last a whole season.
Yeah, you didn't even make it through the whole season. But I mean, that's the thing, right? And I hope RGV fans, they probably don't look at those transactions and go, man, that shows that the Dynamo are committed to seeing this thing work out. But that shows that the Dynamo are committed to seeing this thing work out because they're not sticking with those players that aren't working out. Yeah. Right, they're willing to move on and to continue to build up those ranks so that they can find those players that will work out.
And with the last part of the question, Cisco asked, do they have players that are in mind for RGV to be within a lifetime of their career, or is the goal always to move up to the Dynamo within maybe 2 years? And I think it's more than likely the latter.
Oh, it's a guarantee it's the latter. And you look at the way that they've operated in terms of working with RGV. That's always the focus, is always, and we say it all the time. It's always, how does this player benefit the Dynamo long term? Because their goal is to move players up to the Dynamo. If players aren't going to work out at the USL level, they're not going to work out. If they're not going to work out at the MLS level, the Dynamo are more than willing to move on from them and find other players. The Dynamo Matt Jordan specifically understands there is a deep pool of talent out there at the USL level. Once you move from USL to MLS level, that talent pool thins dramatically. And so they're going to tap that USL talent pool constantly and make sure that the talents that they are tapping at the USL level have at least initially the potential to move up to MLS. But if they are not working out, they're going to move on and find somebody else because there's enough in that talent pool to do that.
So you think that in the near future, RGV's talent level will be
You're going to continue to see it move up and move up and move up.
Higher than the average, if not top USL.
They'll be one of the top USL teams in the next 2 to 3 years, and I know that just you want to smile at that thought because I mean, you know, after the struggles, it's just like that's exactly what you want.
Man, if RGV ever win the USL Cup, oh my God, I'm going to lose.
Okay, so it's like when the Dynamo won MLS Cup the first time, like it was cool, but then to win the Open Cup, I mean, I didn't cry or anything, but I was emotional as hell. I mean, it was amazing. But I think it's important to. Cisco says that on the call, Matt said Jordan said something along the lines of finding quality players is easy, but finding the right quality players is the challenge. That's accurate because you can find plenty of talent. There's plenty of talent out there that are good quality players. Finding them that fit your system, that fit your style,
mentality,
that fit your culture, that fit your mentality, that fit your tactics. And that, frankly, want to stick around long-term within your organization, those 6 things are not easy to necessarily find. And it's finding that mix in the same player that is very difficult. But the advantage is RGV, and I've said this all along, RGV are going to slowly begin to end up with the excess depth at you know, of the MLS level. So instead of being depth at USL level, now they're depth at MLS level, which means your starters are MLS quality players in the next 5 years. Guess what? If you have an MLS capable starting 11 in RGV, remember what we were talking about Liga MX and CCL and all that? Guess what? The Dynamo are ready for CCL long term. That's crazy cool to think about. So
can we have them wearing an RGVFC kit though? No, just kidding. I know.
No, but maybe we can have an RGV badge or something, you know, on one of the sleeves. Wouldn't that be kind of cool? You know, or maybe they come up with like a Dynamo Club system crest or something that's shared among all of the Dynamo organization. That'd be kind of cool. I mean, it makes sense. Anyways, I just think, you know, when we talk about CCL and the reason why generally an optimist to begin with, but the reason why I am so excited looking beyond even this into this season, beyond next season, is because I see the system and I see what they've set up and what they're trying to build towards, and I see that being very successful. Now, successful for that is totally different than successful for other organizations. For other organizations, they're looking for success year after year after year. For the Dynamo, they're looking for success over 10 years. They're looking for success over, you know, the next 5 to 10 years. They're not looking at just the next year. They're not operating in a 1-year mentality. They're operating in a 5 to 10-year mentality. There's a long-term vision, a long-term goal, and they are striving to meet it, and they are doing everything in their power to do that. Fans may not like it, but just like with the Astros, in 3 seasons, you're going to see the difference. We're at the 3rd season next season. We're going to start to see the difference. Woo! I got goosebumps.
You guys can probably tell like how excited I am, but I don't think the camera captures everything that I'm feeling right now.
Cisco says RGV were a late goal away from advancing in the playoffs the first season, and he still cries every time. And then Cisco says, remember, he counted 33 players from top to bottom that took part in the Open Cup run. 33 players. That's deeper than an MLS roster right now. So when it comes to CCL, it is imperative for the Dynamo, $300,000 more in MLS budget, which means you're going to sign USL players and MLS contracts that are going to be playing for RGV next season. Did you catch that?
Yes, I did.
Remember what I said a few weeks back? 2 players. That may be 3 since they won Open Cup. Man, it's a great day to be a Dynamo fan. Even with the loss, even with being out of playoffs, it is an exciting time to be a Dynamo fan. It's exciting to be part of the Dynamo community and family. And you know, we've went well beyond our time tonight for sure. We didn't plan to go nearly this long, but you know, just with Cisco asking the questions, we had to get to them. So, with that being said, are you okay over there? Do you need like a few moments to yourself? I mean, the dog could use a walk. He's been like crying over there to get out. But no, we're going to go ahead and go. Guys, thanks for tuning in. Thanks for joining us. As always, if you've watched us to this point, first of all, thank you. If you've listened to us, also thank you. But do us a huge favor. Like this video, like this stream, share this video, share the stream. Like and subscribe to our YouTube channel, youtube.com/Down in the Valley. youtube.com/Down in the Valley. And then also go on Twitter and follow us on Twitter at Gen Orange Radio, at Down in the RGV. And then also follow our Down in the Valley gaming channel. We've been putting out some content, mostly Rocket League because it's great. And you too can witness Callow scoring own goals. Not really because we didn't record last night, but that was freaking hilarious. That whole match, like at the end of the match, I was just like, I just want to drop the mic and just walk away because it was that crazy.
Yeah, so, expect it not only in Down in the Valley gaming channel, but maybe...
Harry. So Harry says Edson crying because of his team getting beat down. Harry's just trying to get in. You notice he didn't say that on the phone because he doesn't want that to be like recorded with his voice because he knows at the end of the day on Saturday, his ass is wearing an RGV kit coming up pretty soon. With that being said, that's my mic drop moment. I'm calling it. Let's go. Again, like, share, subscribe, and guys, have a good week. Have a good weekend. Remember, forever orange.
Dash TF on.
And somos toros, baby.
Take care.
And hashtag we are Gen Orange.